My name is Sifu Steven Baugh, and I started Kung Fu, or traditional Kung Fu, back in 1964, and started when actually I was very sick. Started off as a sickly child, like a lot of the teachers, I guess, were very popular, and found myself being told actually that I wasn't going to see 16 years old. I remember my aunts crying, everybody said I was going to die, and the doctor said that it was pretty good, and it didn't look too good. And I could tell my aunts are crying, and I remember them crying about me dying, and I could hear everything because everything carries on that floor in the hospital. And they didn't realize I could hear everything they were talking about. And my grandfather getting upset, and I was 12 at that particular time, and him taking me out and he says, I'm not going to leave him here because we're poor, we're tests, we're like guinea pigs. My grandfather wouldn't take that. Took me out of the hospital and took me over to my first teacher, Archie Wong, who was actually more well known at that time as an acupuncturist and a healer. So he started doing the exercise, the medicine for me and the acupuncture. And as a little kid, I guess I was 12 years old and was too fidgety. So what he said, I'm going to teach you an exercise also to make you strong, which was Kung Fu, and I started in that particular way. I loved the art. I mean, I just loved the kicking and punching. And he had me practicing barefoot. He told me to practice barefoot as much as possible, and that I think made me stronger too. He said I needed to connect more with the earth. And the herbal medicines he told me to take, and a lot of them I still buy. Some are over the counter, ones I still buy for purifying the blood and stuff. And now I'm going to have to take the rest of my life because it saved my life, the Kung Fu, because I remember the doctors, they told my mom and my parents at that time that there was a good chance I'd never see 16, 18 would be almost impossible. That there was no way because of my disorder. And, proved them wrong. I'm going to be 54 pretty soon, and it's like, I'm still here. And I owe it to the arts, I owe it to the Kung Fu arts. And it's very good because not only the Kung Fu, I grew up in a very dangerous neighborhood, grew up in South Central in Watts, California, and especially when I got to middle school, it was important to defend myself quite often, being a minority neighborhood. I seen people people walk up to people and set them on fire for no reason. I seen gang of guys walk up to an old man and knock him on the floor and set him on fire for fun. That's what kind of stuff I've seen. My first incident personally is I was about 4 years old. I was in my front of the yard playing with my army men. I had a little army men I would play with, and I watched two guys come across the street and maybe 7-8 feet from me, started arguing and pull out two guns and 245s and shoot each other. And it was amazing because I still today I can remember them spinning in the air. When they hit each other, they both shot at the same time. They both spun, and it was weird because it's almost like they flew. One guy was hit really bad and he was bleeding really bad, and the other guy still had his gun and was trying to go in and shoot the other guy, but his friends called him off and they threw him in a car in a Volkswagen. I still remember this real clear. Threw him in a Volkswagen. They went off, and the other guy was bleeding there and his blood pouring out of his body, going down our driveway. And I remember as a little kid, you see water going down like a sewer on the street and a curb. Little kids, you put sticks and play with the water. I was doing that with his blood, not playing with, but looking at his blood walking down and looking at him, and just kind of like, it was my first thing. And people asked me, was I terrified? I said, no, I wasn't. It was just part of the neighborhood, really. And you just kind of like desensitized to that particular action.
Is he dead?
He did die later on. In fact, both guys died later on, I heard. I remember the cops coming to me and asking me questions, with my grandfather picking me up and saying he didn't see anything. And they're asking, well, we need to talk to him. He didn't see anything, and that kind of thing going on back and forth, And I'd never talked to the cops. But, that wasn't the first time. There's always shootings in that neighborhood, always something crazy happening. But, we would walk to the store, and I'd walk to the store with my grandmother, who was like in her 80s at that particular time. And I'd walk her to the store, and we'd walk down the street. During the Watts riot, the first one in '64, I remember seeing that one very clear. Looking outside and seeing people with rifles running all over the place, Police coming to the house and wanting to take me in, me and my grandparents and my little brother. And I remember looking at the car, and the car's all shut up. And I'm at a 12-year-old, I'm saying, I'm not going in that car. In '64, I'm not going in that car. And I was really studying martial arts at this time, and that was part of me to say, okay, that's just the way that the neighborhood was. And when I grew up, my mom wanted to get me out of the neighborhood, and she moved to Gardena, and Gardena was going to transition at the time in the '60s, or they call it the when the black people move into a neighborhood, everybody will move out. I forgot there's a term for that. And that happened in our neighborhood. It seemed like overnight our neighborhood changed, and it turned pretty violent overnight. Not to say that what it is the environment changed dramatically. And I went to that particular school, and I used to get in a fight almost every day, you know, just because I was different, you know, being a different ethnic origin. Not being afraid, because being around certain people, you know, I was always not afraid. And the thing about it, I knew martial arts. And I think to this day, if I didn't know martial arts, I could have got hurt really bad. And not that I was a great fighter or anything, is that nobody saw the things I did. It's like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, when they fought in the UCFC at first, they dominated because nobody knew what they were doing. But now that everybody knows what they're doing, they won't dominate anymore. You don't hear about any Gracie Jiu-Jitsu people in the top part. You know, you hear about people doing mixed martial arts. The same thing's true when I used to fight as a kid. I'd fight guys who probably could have demolished me, but I would kick, and it was like they don't even know how to block. I mean, when I used to spar, play around in class, you know, kick somebody, they would block it. In the street, you kick somebody, and it's like they wouldn't even respond. You just hit them in the stomach, and it's like they look at you, then you kick them in the stomach again. They didn't even know how to get away from it. Or they try to kick you, and they try to imitate you. If you kick somebody, they try to kick back, and you completely miss. Or their kick would just scrape me. So I was very lucky to that till Bruce Lee came around. Actually, the Green Hornet was the first inspiration first. You saw a little bit. Some people saw that, saw the martial arts, but there was no formal training. Judo was still the big thing. And then when Bruce Lee came in the 70s, I mean, I saw our Kung Fu school go from an average of 10 to 12 students to literally overnight to more than 100 people. I mean, shoulder to shoulder. I mean, I remember walking in the very next day and not even being able to go into school. It's like, what the heck's going on here? It's like everybody came. And of course, our Gong was happy. Started with him and started learning traditional Southern style Kung Fu, or Silum, they would call it, from the five animal system. And started with him, and like the exercises we did, stressed a lot on the five animal system and the five families, including a lot of strength and very Southerner. Meaning there was a lot of handwork, very little kicks. And I was introduced to a gentleman called Ralph Shun, because most of the teachers at that time actually I was very lucky that they were kind of the who's who in the arts themselves. In fact, a lot of the teachers at his particular school, including other famous teachers like Tino Tolasega, Danny Nasano, all these people who grew up, Ed Parker, all these people from other styles, all started with Art Wong at one point. And studied with him. And I was approached by Ralph Shun, and Ralph Shun said, you might want to try to study also with a much younger teacher, because they'll teach you different things. And so he introduced me to other different teachers, and was able to go around to actually different schools at that time. Actually, with the letter, you had to have a letter. You couldn't just go from one school to another at that particular time. You actually had to have a formal introduction. And even went to San Francisco and did things. And so I started studying with different teachers. I got particularly, I wanted to study with one teacher. I don't want to say his name right now, but I tried to study with him, but you had to be Chinese or Asian at the very least to study. And kind of a letdown a little bit. He was a much younger teacher, a very famous teacher today, and was introduced to Dr. Carl, Professor Totten. His name's Carl Totten, and he was just a Sifu at that time. And I would go to this other teacher, and I would watch him teaching him some of the people that I knew in the neighborhood, or actually and when I moved to Gardena at that time. And he would be teaching some of the people that I know, some friends, you might say, and I would kind of watch and be chased away once in a while. And Sifu Carl actually came at one time, and I saw him talking, and Sifu Carl he's an African-American, and I noticed that he was at Art Wong School also, and he would be on different nights that I would be, and so I saw him but didn't really know him at the time. And I was watching him, and I was watching all these people practice, and all of a sudden they started sparring, and Sifu Carl just beat the crap out of all the guys, and he just did a really good job of looking like a martial artist, not just going out there and slugging. So I said, I'm going to approach him and ask him to teach me, and I did, and he kind of looked at me like, why should I teach you? And came and observed the class a couple of times and said, yeah, you train very hard. I'll go ahead and I'll teach you. Well, we train old system. And he says, I know you're spiritual, you're very Catholic because you wanted to be a Catholic priest. I told him that in one of our talks. And he says, you need to open mind, and I'm going to teach you about Taoism as well. Because without Taoism, you're wasting your time, he says, in the arts. And he said you have to go back to where the core is. So we started doing that, and I said he wants to train old style. He said, okay, we'll meet at 12 o'clock at somebody's house, and I said, all right, cool, Kung Fu training. So first thing he did was set us in a horse stance, and we stayed there for like an hour and a half. And I was like, at the time there was 3 of us, I think, started, me, Lloyd, and I can't remember the other person, and Ricardo. And we started, and we kind of stuck it out all the years. We see a lot of people come and go. Carl taught very hard. He wasn't an easy teacher. He was very rough, very violent. He made very hard style, old school. I mean, we would fight and hurt each other, and just, that's the way you did in those days. And they didn't have pads in those days. They really didn't have decent gloves. The only thing you could buy were boxing gloves back then. There was actually no padding at all. It didn't exist. It didn't exist. I remember one time fighting in a tournament and just tying a piece of foam on my shin, because they really didn't even have pads back then. I mean, and the soccer pads were made of hard plastic, and you couldn't use those in kind of training. So, we were trained for hours, and I mean, it would be so hard that on a normal day, even a warm day, steam would be coming off our bodies. And, I trained really hard with him. And, I studied a lot of other things at the same time. I was also studying a form called Philippine foot fighting, or Sikaran. And I liked that particular art. So that was kind of like my influence. So later on, when I got introduced to the northern style, I saw the kicks from Sikaran, and then I saw the hands from the southern, and I was able to incorporate them together in the northern style. So that was very comfortable to me. We started off my career with him was a little bit more of the fighting aspect, not just doing the farms, but real formalized martial art or fighting training. And I thought that was very important, especially growing up in my particular neighborhood. And from there, I would study with him, and he would introduce me also to other teachers like Shi Lu, who was at the Taoist Sanctuary. And Shi Lu was kind of like the great old master of the time. And with the Qigong exercise, the breathing exercise, coming into a different aspect of it, which was from the internal, and a very spiritual point at that time. So I studied with him, also thanks to Sifu Carl. And Sifu Carl at that time, when he graduated from his college, he had to go off to a master. So he asked me to look for a different teacher, or I had to go around and search. And so I kind of looked around a little bit, and Kung Fu started getting real popular at that time in the 70s. And at that time, I was introduced to a gentleman called Cheyenne, who played Han on the TV series. And he told me that to further my martial arts, I should also learn Northern. So I went out looking for a Northern teacher, and actually came across Xingyi first, which was one of the internal stars was Master Shi, and found out he was a very flamboyant teacher, very internal, but he knew his stuff very well. He was a very good martial artist, as well as understanding the inside principles, or the principles of Fa Jing, or how to strike from a different way, not using physical strength. And I thought that was very important also because I was very skinny, I still had my disease, which is a form of like sickle cell. And with his particular training, I was able to use my power in a different way, and I was able to hit a lot harder, especially for a guy my size. I mean, I weighed about 135 pounds up to my middle 20s, so it was part of my disease process, you might say. And so I studied with him, his particular martial arts, and then I saw Sifu Cam Yuen at the time, and that was actually to the Kung Fu series. I went to his school and wanted to study with him because he was teaching Northern. He wouldn't teach me because I guess I looked too much like a gangbanger because I was involved in the South Central type thing. And so he kind of kicked me out of his school, and he kept wandering around and got a job downtown. And in downtown, I came across the Northern Shaolin School, and I said, I want to study this. So I went in there and I studied with them, and I studied with a gentleman called Marvin Kwan and Ken Huey. Even though I was a student at that particular time, the head teacher in a lot of the northern schools, you have to study with the seniors. And when you study with the seniors, what they do is they teach you the basics, and when the teacher feels you're qualified enough or good enough, you can go into the more advanced classes or the regular classes, and he would associate more with you. So I was lucky enough to study with Ken Huey and Marvin Kwan, who are today probably two of the greatest teachers in the northern system. Ken Huey knows a lot of the forms itself, the mechanics of it. Marvin Kwan actually got a lot. He actually went back to China, finished the system in mainland China, and started studying also the internal arts, so of Tai Chi and small circle Tai Chi, and as well as a large frame that's real popular. And I've reconnected with him. And Marvin is kind of interesting. He went to Hong Kong, did very well, studied the Northern Shaolin system, and from there started studying the Tai Chi system. So today I'm actually able to use that particular aspect. But going back, what's happened, I studied at the Northern School, and what happened actually got shut down because of money at this time, the economics and thing. And for there, then I went over to California, back to Torrance, and went back to Sifu Camp School, who had moved location at this time, and start asking him certain things about the Northern system, and start mentioning things in Chinese. And he said, "Oh, you know the Chinese?" I said, "No, I just know certain terms." So I asked him if I could come to school, and he did. My whole demeanor had kind of changed, my outlook. And I mentioned to him how he had kicked me out of the school, and he says he never did that, but you don't make up those kind of stories, really. And I started studying with him, and at his school, it was kind of interesting because all students were learning the basics again from one of the seniors. And at one point, you had a choice of learning what teacher you wanted to go to. And he was with another teacher also. Had a choice of going into the Northern Shaolin system or going into the Lohan, the more advanced Lohan forms, before I could go into the praying mantis. And I started studying with Sifu Camp because I liked his application. I mean, he's a tough guy. And to this day, he's still a tough guy. And I said, I'm still concerned about using Kung Fu as self-defense, not just looking pretty, like a lot of schools do, especially today, the schools coming out of mainland China. And I wanted to associate those moves with martial arts, not separate them like a lot of the schools in China right now. They're doing either kickboxing or what they call wushu. And I said, okay, you should be able to fight with the traditional arts. Cam was much able to do that. And in fact, in those days, back in the 70s, you still had people would come in, and unfortunately, a lot of people would come in from Vietnam, and the guys who went to Vietnam, they'd come back and they have this whole strange mentality, and they want to fight and do things. And most of the time, you would protect their teachers. So we would do that through all my different teachers I was studying with, and with Sifu Cam. The strangest thing is that he's the only teacher I ever had that would kind of knock you out of the way and start pounding these people and dragging them out of the school and taking them out to the street. And he's a tough guy. And he would do it looking like a martial artist, not just this dude. He wouldn't take no flack from anybody. So I started studying with him, and from the Northern system, when I graduated to a certain point, he let me start coming to the praying mantis classes. And that was like a lifelong dream. My lifelong dream was actually not just to learn traditional Kung Fu, but also to learn specifically praying mantis systems as well as Chen Tai Chi. And Cam was really good at teaching the 7-star system as well as the Tai Chi praying mantis, which is more of a secret of the mantis. People don't realize that, a lot of people don't realize this, is that the founder of the praying mantis is a gentleman called Wang Long, and he only taught 3 main disciples. And the Shaolin Temple are trying to say that their system is still directly connected with the Wang Long system, but everybody knows what happened because Buddhists don't have children, that it actually died in a certain time, the system in the Shaolin Temple. And the Taoists that would come and visit are the ones that carried on the system. And Wang Long had 3 students, and their family members carried it on. It was, each had a different body type. And so he asked that they go out and find praying mantis and call it your system. And one found nothing on the praying mantis, so it's called a blank plate. Another one has 7 dots on it, it's called the 7 stars. And the other one looked like a plum flower, so he called it the Grand Ultimate Plum Flower System, or Tai Chi praying mantis, which was very, very popular. And what happened, that system actually cut into 2 parts from brothers. One took the Tai Chi name, and the other one took the plum flower name. But what happened is that, like most people, I got caught in that yuppie time in the 80s, and wanted to make a lot of money, decided Kung Fu was doing it, and I needed to just make money for my family. And found out that I was spending all my time at work and not no time with my family. And the interesting thing is that at this particular time, I had a mentor who was a very good mentor, and his name was Joe Roush. And he would work so hard, and when he died, I remember, our stories, we were talking about how hard he worked for his family so his family could have everything. And when he passed away and I went to his funeral and his wife was there, and I showed up, I said, where's the kids? He's always talking about the kids. She said, as far as they were concerned, he cared more about work than them. And I saw myself making the same mistake. I mean, there's about 3 years. I was stuck in that for about 4 years. And didn't practice my kung fu. That's when my weight changed. I went from being real athletic to heavy. And in that particular time frame, in 4 years, and found myself making the same mistake. And to let you know, I work in my job in hospice, and I always ask my patients if they have regrets, and nobody ever has a regret that they didn't spend enough time at work. It's always, I didn't spend enough time with my family. So I decided it's time to make a change. So I came here on the weekend.
How old are you here?
And this is in 1989. So I came here and I said, I remember looking at how inexpensive it was, and I said, okay, I'm not going back. I just called up and told them my company, I was with them for like 14 years, I'm not going back. And so I'm going to find and start a new life here, finish my priesthood, and just teach them, just practice myself. So I did, and the interesting thing, I started training by myself in the garage, and I see Raul and his friends come by once in a while. They watch me practice in the garage. And just going back over my forms and all my things. And then the strangest thing, I get a call from Todd, who I trained with at Doug School, or I knew from Doug School. And I hadn't heard from him in years, and he said that there's this big event happening in California. And he said he had this channel friend, and this channel friend was named Ephraim. And this is where everything changes completely. And Ephraim was a channel, and he knows he's a real channel because he's channeling the Chinese tradition, yet he's Mexican, has absolutely no idea about the Chinese, yet he's answering all of Todd's intricate questions about the history and about certain spirituality, even though Ephraim has totally no background on this at all. So he said, I know he's channeling for real. So he says that General Kwang Hun, who we follow, he said, if you want to take the next step, you need to find your brother. You need to talk to your brother in the desert. And Todd goes, I didn't know anybody in the desert. Then all of a sudden he called L.A. trying to get hold of me. Found out I moved to Las Vegas. So he says, you're the brother in the desert he told me to contact. So he's telling me about this guy Ephraim, and that we need to go to some big happening in L.A. this particular day. He says, what's happening? I remember because my birthday was on December 14th in L.A. What's happening? I said, well, my student manual's having a get-together. He just is his third get-together. Every year he has one. He invites all the teachers. Nobody ever comes, just me and Raul. And so he goes, well, General Kwang is saying that he said that he wants you there because you're part of this thing. And then he starts telling me about all this stuff that's happening. In my mind this time, I'm telling him, oh, okay, yeah, right. Because at the time in my life, I was having doubts about my own spirituality. I think we all go through that. And I remember looking up at the sky and saying, what if it's all bullshit? What if there is no God? What if there's no heaven? What if it's all fake? And here I'm living my life to be best, and why don't I just go out there and make money and do what I got to do to make money? And I remember having those doubts, in my head. And all of a sudden he calls me up and tells me about this guy channeling that tells him I need to be there in LA. And I thought, okay, this is happening. I'll meet you in LA because I'm going to go there anyway for my student manuals thing. And he said, what mean manual? I said, manual's having this get together with all the teachers. He said, whoa, that's what he's talking about, meaning that Ephraim was channeling this through General Kwang and Master Shi, my old teacher that passed away. And I said, okay, so so he's channeling all these things. I said, well, so what am I connected with this? And he said, I don't know. So he said, you need to be there. And he said, also, Manuel said, I invite teachers every year, and then none of them ever show up and never respond. They totally ignore me, he goes. And I said, okay, so I hang up the phone, and I remember my ex-wife saying something. I said, why want to talk to me? What do I have to do with it? And especially Master Shi, because we kind of left on bad terms. She goes, you got to remember, all the teachers in LA, you have a connection with them. You were friends with almost all of them, or you were studied with them. He said, you're the connection. You're the center of the wheel that points to all these teachers. I said, okay. He said, also Master Shi's always talked about getting all the teachers together, the Kung Fu arts together, get them united. That was his dream when he was alive. So so I said, okay, so I call up Manuel and tell him for sure I'm coming over. He says, and Manuel used to call me his teacher at the time, but since he's rescinded, so he's got a big head now. But he said that I asked all these teachers, he used to call me Sifu. He says, Sifu, the weirdest thing is that this is the first time everybody's responding that they're going to come over. I said, well, that's weird. He said, well, Carl's going to be there, Doug and Cam. I said, what? Because at the time in the 70s, they all hated each other. A lot of the teachers hated each other. They weren't friendly. So lucky they've grown up since then, or they've all got along. But at the time, we didn't know. So I go to L.A. I met Ephraim, and he was nothing like I expected, because I expected a guy to look more stereotyped Mexican. He doesn't. He looks very European almost. And he talks perfect English. And so I meet him. I'm totally not impressed. So we get in the car. I said, okay. He says, he said, Master Shi and General Kwan said they need to go to the place they're going to have this get-together to make sure there's no negative spirits in there, nothing going to try to create havoc. No monkey spirits or horse spirits, what he said specifically. So we go over there. And so for the heck of it, we're driving there. I said, I'm going to see if he knows. I'm going to drive on the way to manual school. I'm going to drive by Master Shi's old school, see if he picks up on anything. So Ephraim's in the back and Todd's in the front next to me. All of a sudden I go by the school, and all of a sudden Ephraim goes, I know this place. And he's like, it wasn't his voice, it was Master Shi's voice and his accent. So I was like, man, it freaked me out. I said, this is Master Shi's coming out of his voice. And I thought, I looked at Todd, I said, maybe Todd gave him a signal that this is the old school. So I look at Todd did, and I said, okay, wait, I got to go to Manuel's house first. So my student Manuel, I had the key to his school. He gave me the key to his school, in fact. But I said, I'm going to go to Manuel's school. We drive up to Manuel's house. I said, Manuel, I opened the door first. I said, this guy's channeling, and he's kind of freaking me out, to be honest with you. I said, see if you think what he's doing is real, or he's just bullshitting us. So we go inside there, and Ephraim goes inside there. At the time, Ephraim was a medium. He wasn't. Now he's a channel. Before he was a medium. He let the spirits come inside of him, and his body would change. You could see him. His face would change, and you could see like this energy was different. And so we sat down, and we sat in a chair, and Todd's there, and they're asking me questions about General Kwan, and he wants to talk. And he said, no, let's bring Master Shi first. So they brought Master Shi. And the Master Shi, he wants to introduce some people. So he brought like Saint Germain and all these other spirituality. And I tell you what, it's the first time in my older age that I ever saw energy so powerful. Because when he started channeling Saint Germain like this, he started doing a prayer, and I saw the prayer from his hand turn into a whirlwind and go up. I could see his prayer moving up, and I thought, whoa. And I remember looking at Amanda, do you see this? Am I tripping or what? And Amanda's looking at me like, Amanda has a very expressive, like, whoa, what's this? You know, you could see it coming out of his hand. And so he did a prayer, then he did a Hopi elder. And the Hopi language, if you ever hear the Hopi language, they speak like Yoda. And this is before Star Wars was ever around. And they speak like sideways. You know, they speak, you know, they don't speak like straight or backward. They speak like in an angle. And he was doing a literal translation of this Hopi. And then he came to, he said, I want to bring General Kwan. Oh, at one point, before General Kwan, I could tell you, Ephraim, when he was channeling, he kept saying, this guy Joe George keeps interrupting me. And Manuel like almost fell out of his chair. And I thought, Jojo, because sometimes when he says names, they don't come quite clear. The guy's name was Joe George. And he was one of our school brothers that died about 5 years before that of a brain tumor out of nowhere. I mean, the guy was like the most loving, peaceful, great instructor, had a TV program, a documentary program he was doing in L.A. on regular TV. And out of nowhere, he developed brain cancer and he died. And I remember even with Sifu Carl, I said, Joe George did all the right stuff, you know. He prayed, he meditated, he did everything. Why did he die of this cancer? And I mean, Carl looked at me and said, sometimes things just happen. You know, there's no reason for anything. Something just happens. And I remember looking at Manuel, and Manuel's like, freaking out. His eyes are watering at this time. So I said, something's going on. So I look at Manuel and I said, what's going on? And Ephraim starts chanting. He said, I'm listening to this guy. I'm not going to bring him in. I'm just listening to him. He's saying, I need to rescind the vow we made with the knife. And when he said that, I think Manuel did fall off his chair at that time. And I said, what's going on? He said, he's talking about Joe George. And I said, Joe George? He goes, yeah, we made a pact over with a knife of his. And he went and grabbed the knife. He said, we made a pact with this knife that I would keep his school open. When he was dying on his deathbed, he says, here's this knife. Please vow, make a promise to me that you'll keep my school open. Well, Manuel couldn't because there was no way with his school, and the other one was on the other side of town. But I always wondered how Manuel got all these weapons. You know, I went to Manuel school, he had 1 or 2 weapons, all of a sudden he's got all this whole arsenal of weapons on the wall. Well, the fun to find out they were Joe George's. When he closed his school, he brought them over to his school. Well, Joe George was telling him that because when he was human, when he was still alive, he made the stupid vow, he needed to rescind on the vow so he can cross over into another level. He has to hold himself to this place. He has to hold himself to this particular place. So he did that, and he rescinded this thing, Manuel did, and he was telling me about this whole thing. He was telling all of us about this vow that he made with Joe George, and he added, and when he said it was over, that he resented, that he wasn't going to hold on to it anymore. And Joe George wanted to. You could feel the room just lighten up. Joe George was able to travel into another realm where he was need to go. He said he wanted to be reborn. In fact, I remember that he wanted to be reborn. He couldn't because his vow was holding him in his presence in heaven. So I say, okay, this is the kind of stuff that was happening. I'm thinking, wow, this is really a trip. And Efren goes, Todd said, I'm going to bring up General Kwang Gun. And somebody else said, wait, don't do that, because every time you do, he gets upset. It's like, what do you want? He goes, I'm going to call upon him. So I think it was Ephraim was saying that. So Ephraim goes, okay, I call him. And when I saw him do that, it was the most remarkable thing, because Ephraim changed. I saw, like when you see on TV, when you see like a figure, then like another figure over the person. I could see General Kwan over Ephraim so clear. You see his beard, and he was taller, his energy, and what happened is the energy got so powerful in the room, it was almost like if I was really high. All I could see was television, was this. Everything else was dark. And he talked to me, and I was like, wow, this is like the deepest, this is like the most beautiful stuff I ever heard. Everything made total sense. He would talk to Manuel, and I would be listening, I couldn't understand it. Afterward, I told Manuel, I said, I couldn't understand a word he told you. And Manuel goes, when he talked to you, I couldn't understand a word he said. And, Todd would say, or Ephraim would say, that's because he's speaking to your heart. When he's speaking to you, you know everything he's saying, because it's your deepest secrets that he can touch on. And the same thing with Manuel. And he was telling me that it was time to move, that he'd been setting up all these things here in my city, in the land of the desert. And he said he was setting up, he said, people are coming to you asking for you to teach your martial arts. And it's true, because a church of religious science called, somebody I knew back in high school had moved here, found out I had moved here, and asked me to come teach Tai Chi at the first church of religious science over by the college. And I thought, okay, that's cool. And I thought I'd do that. And the Q Club called up, and they said they wanted to start teaching Tai Chi at the Q Club, which is now 24 Hour Fitness. I said, okay, I could do that. And General Kwan, he was telling me all this stuff. He was actually giving me information, and he told me, your school is going to be one with heaven. It's different. It's going to be the way it was in the old days. No separation. Your school is going to teach spirituality. There was no separation, the true Lohan tradition. And he says that he's already setting it up. He said what's happening with all other school brothers, he's been setting up also. They're not listening. He said you're listening, that you're actually responding to the things that he's setting up, like these teachers coming to me, these churches asking me to teach 24-hour. He said, heaven is setting it up. He says, not coincidence. Heaven is making sure this happens to you. And also students going to start coming your way, special students. So he told to show you that what I'm telling you is true. He said, I'm going to show you, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. And I said, okay. So another thing he said is, it hurts you, your son doesn't want to study. And at the time, Raul didn't want to study. Raul was like into his own thing. He was like skateboarding and breakdancing and stuff. And it kind of bothers me, but I always say he's his own man. He's going to do what he wants to do. And General Kwan says, you go back and you treat him like a man, you open up your heart, and you tell him this. And basically it came down to tell him that, I respect him as a man and how I study the arts. And I'll be honest with you, I don't remember the rest of it. And Raul doesn't either. He remembers the talk, but we both remember what I was told, because I memorized what he told me to tell him. So I go back, and when I came back to Vegas, I told Raul, I said the exact same thing. And I remember Raul had that same look that Carl gave me when I asked Carl to teach. And the next day he comes in, and I was working on the garage. It was Sunday. He goes, hey, Dad, I want to study Kung Fu. I really want to study now. And I have two twin brothers that want to study. So that was the first two students was that, and then also the next time Big Roy came, and Big Roy is he's the one that fights at IFL right now. He's kind of a fighter, and Omar, and I went to the Tai Chi at the 24 hour, and I was teaching over there, and then Dalton got involved, and Sarge, and Timmy. It's like all my first students came to me all at the same time. Bobby, they all came. And he told me that they were going to come exactly, and that was our first Lohans, school, and we had to kind of make a reputation for ourselves, which a guy named Troy did. Troy's passed away since then, but Troy, we fought in a tournament, and it was like all the martial arts schools here in Vegas, we dominated that particular tournament. So it gave us a reputation, right off the bat in this town, which was still a pretty small town in '89. And he told me during the seance also that General Kwan was saying that certain things were going to happen. And one of them about teaching martial arts to students, he said that you were going to come into a lot of money. And I thought, okay, if I did or didn't. And the strange thing is, I got back in the mail, there was a check for $8,000. And the check was from, my stepfather had passed away like 4 years before that. And he had a pension that was due him, like a thing. And I remember sending the paperwork, and they're saying, well, you have to send this paperwork. I sent that paperwork. Well, you didn't do this. I sent that in. Well, you're supposed to send it in triplicate, which they never tell you till you know. And I said, I don't want nothing to do with them. So I just wrote it off. And like 3 or 4 years went by, and all of a sudden, here's the check that they gave me for that, all that trouble I went through years earlier. I was trying to fight. So everything he told me was coming true. I mean, just right in a row. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is real. In fact, after I talked to him, we came back. Even that night when I first met General Kwan and through Ephraim, I remember not being able to sleep like 3 days solid. I mean, I just sit there and I thought, wow, there is an afterlife. I mean, when you really realize that there's an afterlife, your life completely changes. Because I think most people have doubt. Most people still have that, I believe in God, I believe in afterlife, but back there they still have a little bit of doubt, and that still anchors them here. But once that doubt can completely disappear, and you know that there's no doubt. And the same thing is like Master Shi. Master Shi came back to me, and we had our arguments and stuff like that. And the information he was giving me, it's only he knew. And the one thing that Master Shi, when Ephraim first came and he started talking to me with Master Shi called me Quiet Lion. That's my real family name. And by coincidence, Master Shi used to call me the same name. And Ephraim's channeling him, and nobody knew that name but me and him. And he called me Quiet Lion. I thought, there's no way he could have known this. And even when he was telling me about my son, and when I was having doubts about if this is really Master Shi, I would ask him about, how's this student doing? Who's this? How about him? He knew everybody. I mean, I would say about Carl. I was saying, I would ask him spiritually about Carl, and he would, General Kwan and Master Shi both would just tell me. Now, the strangest thing is that, the certain things you learn when you're growing up. And I learned with Sher Lu, who's also my Taoist master that I met back in like 71, 72, 73.
How old were you when you met him?
I was like 17, 18 when I met Master. And Carl sent me to him, in fact, to learn. Right when I did, Carl wanted me to learn more about Taoism and sent me to the Taoist sanctuary with him. And then I was on my own. He wanted me to go there on my own. So there's certain exercises that we learn, but sometimes when you learn so many exercises, you kind of put everything in the background. Well, when General Kwan came through Ephraim, he was telling me that when you begin all your classes, you begin with the three, heaven, earth, and mankind. You would begin, and he was teaching me certain things. You would teach your student about you teach them to focus on their dantian, their breath, their life, the elements. Everything that I teach you guys currently now, he told me that one night, you will teach this. And when the seance was over, when everybody went, when Ephraim let everybody, jump out of his body, which is so dangerous, by the way. But by the way, when Ephraim let everybody out of his body, I got to tell you, there's no way he could fake this. And I remember seeing that, because when he would have this, the higher the spirit, the more his body would be intense when it jumped out of his body. Probably the two worst I saw was General Kwan and the Monkey King. And by the way, this one I remember. He said that what was unique about all the other teachers, because there's other teachers he met in Mexico, he said, in different places. He said they would always want to talk to General Kwan, and General Kwan would be like, what do you guys want? What do you need? What do you want? What's your question? Come on, hurry. And I remember when General Kwan came to me first, when Ephraim, he looked at me. I mean, he was sitting there. And you could see the spirit over him. It's like, what do you want? And I asked him a question. And he goes, your question is true. And he answered me, and he worked with me. And Ephraim said at the very end, he says, the strangest thing he's channeled this General Kwan for different other people. He says, the feeling is that he knew you. He knew you. You guys were alive together. He goes, he knew you. He said he was teaching you. He's never done that, he said, with any other people. It's always like, don't waste my time. I got to get out of here. I'm busy. He actually sat and talked. He said he never did that with anybody else. And ever to this day, he still has that communication with me. He always asks me. Kenny and Tyson are two other people he communicates strong with. They were also with him. They were also they were soldiers of his when he was alive, both those guys. Kenny he gets upset with, by the way, because Kenny knows better but has a tendency not to believe. Tyson believes, but his connection's just not as strong as Kenny's. But anyway, so when Ephraim jumps out of this spirits, they get so powerful that it actually at one point, especially when he did the monkey, it looks like somebody lifted him up. He looked like he levitated and then just got dropped on the floor. And then I thought, wow, man, this guy's put on a good act or something. 'Cause, I mean, it was like really exaggerated. And I put my hand on his neck, and it looked like he was going to pop out. His heart was beating so fast. I mean, I never felt a human being that fast. And just like you could see his veins just popping like in his head. I thought for sure he's going to have like a major aneurysm or something. I'd get ready to call 911, the emergency. But Todd, started doing qigong with him and rubbing his chest and calmed down. Since then, by the way, Master Steve says, don't bring us into your body, just listen to us. Don't be so stupid. I said exact words. Don't be so stupid. Just listen to us and we'll tell you. And that's what Ephraim does now instead of letting him in. The other one we did was after we talked with Manuel, we went over there, said they want to go to the school. And Manuel's like, you should saw his face. And he believes in General Kwan to this day, but I think he really got afraid. He's a very strong Christian background, and this other thing that there's something else, I think really kind of frightened him because he wants to believe, but I feel like he's afraid. So we go to a school, and there's a couple of spirits that are pretty bad, and somebody asked, let's see a different spirit come inside of him, because they noticed that how this other spirit would come over him. They said, let's see the Monkey King, and I could see Ephraim go, I don't know. We did that before, and it was kind of scary. So Todd said, no, let's bring the Monkey King in. So they brought the Monkey King in, and I tell you, that's the best imitation of a monkey I ever saw in my life, of a man monkey. I mean, Ephraim was running up the walls almost like when he was in this posture, and the way he would change. And I got to tell you, the Monkey King you don't mess with, because he's not funny. He's got a strength. He's got a certain strength, and he's connected with the school. Anyway, he cleared the school. There was like a horse spirit that we saw, like a horse that died. Cause he found out that school, there was a barn in that particular area that its location was, and the horse spirit was still there. He said it's funny because Ephraim the Monkey King pointed where the horse spirit was, and he said nobody could go in that area. He had all these weights and bags and stuff, but he said nobody ever felt comfortable in that area. They always said, his brother, in fact, said that when he laid down, he felt like something was always laid on his chest, so he wouldn't even go in that corner. So anyway, he cleaned the corner, he cleaned the school, then he took the Monkey King out, and that's when I saw Ephraim get the worst I've ever saw jump out of his body. So the next day, it was a meeting with all the teachers, and all the teachers came, and everybody was so friendly. It's like, they cleaned the spirit, they want to make sure nothing happened, and everything was real good. Now, so coming back to Vegas, let me see if I got everything done with that General Kwan. Yeah, it's pretty clean with General Kwan. All this stuff. So we come back to Vegas, and I started teaching in the garage, and teaching the students the first Lohans, a little tougher. Like I was teaching more of the fighting aspect of the martial arts. I wasn't teaching the whole balance. So I was kind of like leaning toward the fighting aspect of it, and Ephraim comes again, and he came in, he did a channel, he started channeling here and brought a lot of people in out of nowhere. And it was interesting because he would tell, everybody has what they call a virtue name. And this virtue name is a name that you carry in all your spirit forms. Every lifetime to lifetime is something you carry. And he had the first Lohan sitting down. He went down and said, honest man, like strong arm, this, the Sarge, which is like Sarge, I call him Sarge. He had a name for everybody. And he never met any of these people at all. In fact, he never saw them do martial arts or nothing. He just came to the house. I told him, this guy's here, everybody come over. Everybody came. Because I told him this is how it started because of him. And he called, like, Raul was the leader. At the time, Raul wanted nothing to do with leading. He didn't want to teach or nothing. Raul just wanted to kind of work out. Look where he's at. He's a leader now. You see at the lion dances. And he went down and named everybody something. And he's dead on about every person that he talked about. And he did the spiritual stuff, connect us back with the spirituality. Like Dalton, who's a lawyer of the schools, is Strongwall. He's the one that makes sure the school's protected, and that's what Dalton does. He has a name for like everybody and their job function. He's supposed to be coming back pretty soon, but right now he's in Spain, and we're trying to get some visas. They're having trouble getting visas, so everybody's always calling me, asking me where he's at. One of these times he said, this channel Danny, and I said, I was like, for the first time in a long time, I felt like terrified. Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Because I had a girl that I was kind of hanging out with that was a psychic, and she says, wow, every time I try to call your brother Danny, he's like violent, he's like scratching and mad. I just like, I don't want him around. He's like angry. I said, okay, so Ephraim goes, okay, I'm going to channel him. So we sit down, he sits down, he calls General Quan and the protection, and Todd's a protector. And in the seance is a Taoist method, you always had the channel, which is the pure light, and then you have the protector, which is Lohans, most of our protectors. Our job at the spiritual realm, if he sees a spirit coming at him, with chi, he'll pull a shield up and stop it. Also, the protector has the ability to call upon General Quan or Junk Wade. All you guys have that. Lohans have more power than they realize to call other spirits for help. They just have to believe it. And he'll call other spirits to protect Ephraim. Where he goes, he said, I'm gonna call your brother. So he called my brother, he goes, put a shield up. And Todd did, he goes, whoa, he goes, your brother is mad, he's angry. So he called General Quan, and Todd calls General Quan up, he goes, please subdue Danny. So General Quan, I could feel his Quan Do come out. I said, oh, don't hurt him. He hits my brother with the side of his Quan Do, his spirit, and then Dawson and Ephraim's like, whoa, your brother's got a weird laugh. I said, yeah, my brother Danny had a weird laugh. He goes, it's like this. And he never met Danny. And he imitated his laugh perfect. And he goes, he's got a weird laugh. And I said, what's he saying? And Ephraim's laugh, he goes, is his backwards. He goes, oh man, it feels good. I'm so fucked up, just like the old days. This feels good. They said General Quan hit him, so he did the subdue him, with the side of his Quan Do. He didn't cut him. So he's talking to him. I said, Danny, what's wrong? I said, man, how you doing? He's like angry. He said, well, he's really mad at you. And I said, why are you mad at me? He says, because you can hear me, and you've always been able to hear me, but you don't listen to me. He says, you hear spirits, but you don't listen. And he's getting mad at me, and he's telling me off, basically. And I was like, dude, give me a break, I'm not a super magical guy here. I'm not a channel. I'm a protector. And he's saying, I said, you know what I want to tell you? I said, you know what kind of hell you put Mom through? He goes, you know hell, Steve? He goes, you know what hell is? Hell is when you want to touch your loved ones, and you can hear them, and you can feel them arm's distance away, but you can't hold them. He said, I can't hold my wife to tell her I love her. I can't hold my children to tell them I love them. He said, this is hell. I'm in hell right now. And then I understood. I said, whoa, yeah, he is. That's got to be the worst thing. Could I ask him? I said, are you in like a fire hell? And he goes, no. He said, when you commit suicide, you're in the worst hell possible, because you can feel your loved ones and you can't touch them. You want to tell them you're sorry. You understand when you're on the other side, you see things different, and you can't do anything about it. You're stuck in this void, like this fog that you can't get out of. And so I asked General what I could do, and Ephraim says, do this. So what we did is we asked him to join General Quan to take him and make him a soldier. And once he became a soldier, to stand at my side and let me know if anything was going on, which he does at times. But he goes, wow, your brother's now kind of interesting guy. And I said, what's going on? He said, I could feel it. I could almost see it. He said, oh, they're taking him to this temple to train, to become a soldier under General Quan. And he goes, man, your brother's weird. And it's exactly what my brother would say. My brother going, hey, I didn't sign any contracts. So, and he's supposed to have been there for 3 months, and a month afterwards, Ephraim came back again. He goes, well, your brother's here already. I said, how did he get out? I thought he was supposed to train for 3 months. He goes, your brother's a con artist, and he was a con. My brother was a con artist, man. He said, he's a con artist. He got out already. He did what he was supposed to do, and he's talked his way into being at your side. I said, oh, okay, well, that's cool. So, he did okay, but he still has problems. His mind, even in spiritual realm, you have problems because all of a sudden he'll get stuck in that fog again. But my mom calls him to that fog, and I argue with my mom. I said that because she'll call him, push him right back into that state because his faith is still not that strong. I mean, he believes, but he's still not that strong, even in the spiritual realm. We still learn in the spiritual realm. So, Ephraim did that's one of the channels that he did, and was my brother able to communicate with him. It was so rough and so violent that I had to learn martial arts. I had to. I didn't get stuck in the violent mental part of it. I still talk smack sometimes, but I do that for fun more than out of true intention. I would say mostly, there's a lot of different things that happen. Everything in LA, everything about the martial arts of violence, that, thing I went in, me being jumped by the Crips before they even got famous. I mean, my life is almost like Forrest Gump. I always tell people I'm the Forrest Gump. I even have a picture in a couple magazines and books that I'm there just in the background. And it's so funny because they're just like, there's a tournament about somebody coaching. There's two girls, one of Ed Parker's books, and they have girl tournament fighting, and I'm standing behind. You can see me coaching one of the persons. And I wasn't the coach of that girl, is what it was. Is I would go to tournament, and I just I'll go watch this ring fight, and just had to be these girls fighting, And I would choose this one girl. I said, use your kick, use your foot like that. And later on, she won, and she came to me, she says, your voice stands out. I can hear your voice. Can you coach me? Can you please? So I did. So, I'm coaching this girl, and they take this picture. And this girl happened to win the tournament, And my picture's right there, and it's really weird. It's, a lot of things like that happen. And when I saw Forrest Gump, I said, I kind of identify with him. I'm just in the right place at the right time. There's a picture with Art Wong had in the school. They had Danny Nasano, Ed Park, all these famous teachers, Richard Bustillo. They're all practicing the salute form. And I'm standing in the background as a kid, 12 years old, big old thick horn with black glasses. I had Harman glasses at the time. And looked more like a kid that just walked off the street than a martial art kid. Because he wasn't that strict on wearing uniforms back then. And that picture I wish I could get, because that's man, all these famous teachers, and I'm just standing there, they're all training. I was just a little kid, it wasn't my class. And I just happened to hanging out, because Art Walk School, you could go there and hang out and train all day if you wanted to. And I would do that. I just go when I could get there.
So you're right by the side just watching?
Yeah, I was just actually standing there like a little goofy kid, just standing there watching. And let's see what other things. I don't know, events. I could tell you one event that happened. For a movie, would be a good story too. Is that when the Crips first started, they were wearing. I remember there's a park called Helen Keller Park. It was probably a black neighborhood, or really tough neighborhood. But when the Crips started, that particular area was strange because it wasn't really poor. It was middle class. A lot of the original Crips weren't from lower class. They're actually middle class people. It's their parents were at work all the time, so they just weren't there. And for them, and the kids were hanging together, and they became thugs, you might say. And I remember going to Helen Keller Park, and these guys I knew from school, because I kind of knew everybody. It's like now I kind of know everybody. I walk to the park, I see these guys, and I'm training, so I have my leg weights. I have 5-pound weights in my hands, and I'm jogging. And I run to this park. It was nowhere near a house. It's like a neighborhood I shouldn't have been close to. And I go to and I see these guys in the park. So I see my friends, so I start just jogging by them. I didn't think nothing, because if I knew there was going to be trouble, I would have walked around or ran around. So I kind of go right by them, and all of a sudden they surround me, even the guys I knew. And I remember saying, one guy's Ronnie particularly, say, Ronnie, I said, what's going on? And I remember him looking at me like, I don't know you. And all these other guys I knew that didn't act like they didn't know me. And at the time, I used to wear like rings everywhere. That was like my insignia. I had to wear chains now. I used to wear rings. And I stopped and they surrounded me. And the guy said, "Give me your rings." I said, "I can't. They don't come off." And he could, but I said that. I remember him grabbing my ring, and he pulled, and out of reflex, I kicked the guy in the groin. I mean, hard with his weights on. And I remember like slow motion, like thinking, I'm gonna die. But everybody was so shocked I did that. I remember the shock in their faces. Nobody could believe I kicked this guy. And I just remember like a little hole, run. And I ran to the middle of traffic. I mean, there was El Segundo and Vermont was like a major busy city of streets. I remember running to the signal everywhere. I remember cars coming, jumping over the cars. I was running to that. I was so scared. And I started, there's my weights. I didn't realize I was just running, And I ran down this, and I just remember, because I was running track at the time too. I was trying to get in the track team, and I remember never look back. I remember the coach saying that. So I was just booking, never look back, because when you look back, you lose precious seconds, split seconds. So I just started running. I don't know when I lost these guys. I don't know if I lost in the traffic, but I just was running, like, run, Forrest, run. I did. I ran, and I saw this one guy. I know him and his dad. They were working on the sprinklers. I saw him, and I looked at him for a second. And I knew his house, and actually that's the house I was running for, because he was like the closest one I knew in that area. I looked at his fence, and I leaped over his fence. Must have been about 6 foot tall. I just jumped over that thing, and I jumped in the back. I don't know if he had a dog. I didn't care. I remember jumping over there. I remember the dad and him were, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I remember I could not breathe. I couldn't breathe. I was like trying to suck. I could not breathe. I couldn't talk. And I thought I was going to pass out there. And he goes, "What's the matter?" And I finally told him, I said, "These guys are chasing me." And I remember the dad laughing, "Boy," he said, "you are around these guys with these weights on your legs?" Man, I tell you what, when you're scared, you can move. You could move. And that night, they killed some guys, I remember, at Forum for some shoes. I remember they killed a guy for his shoe. That's the exact same night, these same guys. I think one of them was Tukey Williams. I really believe he was there. I really believe he was there. So, wrong place, wrong time,
They call you names, or they just said they give you stuff?
I don't remember.
Like in high school?
They didn't call me derogatory names or nothing. No. I mean, they're just like, "We're going to get this guy. It was more like, I was like prey to them, and I really felt like it, when they surrounded me. I said, but at that time, I've seen that kind of stuff, I remember having a fight. I remember going into a bathroom, and this guy smoking cigarettes, and I looked at him, and he said, "What?" And he says, "What, you don't like it? What do you look at me?" He called me some name, I remember, and he come at me, and I remember kicking him in the chest, and he fell back, and he couldn't believe it. He came at me again, and I kicked him in the chest again, and his back hit the urinal. He's like, he started freaking out. Then the vice principal came in and started beating the shit out of all. He hit me, and I was like even there. I was just going to the bathroom, I remember, this vice president's going crazy on everybody, like a dean. So, I remember that kind of stuff, those kind of things that would happen.
How old were you when you with that one guy, that really evil guy that you knocked out, and then you did sign on his head?
Oh, that was in, well, that's a dark story. That was in, I think Raul was already born, maybe.
Oh, so 80s?
No, 70s. About middle 70s, 75, 76. This guy was a really evil guy, really evil. And I remember he was an Italian guy, and
This is where?
in Gardena. And I remember seeing this guy, and everybody was afraid of this guy, because I was involved in gangs at that time, and I wasn't like a guy who would go beat up people. I was more for protection. And we were in G13, who's a very famous gang, by the way. I mean, they were really well known. Everybody hates them in LA. We were part of that, but there's a lot of cliques within it. A lot of cliques within the gang, and our gang was the ones that, our particular ones are the guys that would always, we were in the gang, but we were more interested in girls than gang banging, But I remember this one guy named Al, I just call him Al, and I remember him, everybody was scared of him. And there's about 3 or 4 guys everybody was just scared of. And I didn't let people know I knew martial arts. Because I remember, especially when I started with Seagun. Seagun says, you got to treat the martial arts like a gun. You don't want everybody to see your gun. Because they do, they know how to protect against it. So you always got to hide it. Don't let nobody know. If anybody says you know martial arts, say, a little bit. That's very Chinese. I know a little bit. And so nobody really knows how much you know. And I remember this guy, Al, and I remember going to a place called Pitburger, which everybody used to go eat all the time. It's real known. I remember getting in line, and a couple of us are waiting, and my best friend, or Raul's godfather, is dating one of the girls that works there. So we're going to go. We're like waiting in line. And it was outside, one of those outside places. And I remember him driving up, and it's like, you don't want to look at him. Don't make eye contact with the guy, because the guy just has attitude. I mean, the guy looked evil. He looked like an Italian version of Mike Tyson almost,
The same age range?
Yeah, it was maybe a little bit older. Yeah, he's the same age range. And I remember him, there was an elderly couple there, and I remember him just pushing him out of the way, And I was going to say something, and the old man said something, and he hauled off and he hit the man. I mean, really hard. I mean, just nailed that poor old guy. I was scared. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to say nothing. I was scared. This guy was like psycho crazy. I didn't want to say nothing. It's my own business. That's kind of learned that sometimes in the neighborhood. The other day we were watching, remember we went to Bonson's birthday party, and those people were fighting over there. I said, I told everybody, don't look, just mind your own business. And just kind of keep an eye on but don't stare, And I remember he would just do stuff like that. He would hurt people. He'd drive down the street, he'd get out of the car and just punch people. He just did beat people like at a party. He would go to a party or wedding just to hurt people. No other reason. I mean, he would do that.
Was he part of a gang too? Or?
No, yeah, he was a gang, but he was independent. He was like the main thug, and he had his like little posse, you might say. They didn't call it that back in those days. He kept choosing me on, and I could see it really bothered me. And Raul's godfather, Ricardo, who's a kung fu stylist also at this time. That's a whole different story too. He kept saying, we got to get this guy. This guy's going to get you. He goes, this guy's going to get you. He's going to find a time he's going to get you. He's going to wait till you're by yourself and stuff like that. I mean, he got me so worked up. And we were driving down, Gardena Boulevard at one time, and I was living right in the ghetto there. That's one of my first places to get. When I had a Raul, I decided I wanted to get my own place. So I go down the street, and I see him drive into this place. I saw his car, and I saw him drive by himself, and I looked and slowly, and I see him get out of his car and go into the bar. He never saw me. And I thought, this is interesting. And I knew, people tell me, it was like in the evening, at dusk. The sun was going down, in fact, that particular, it was still light. And I remember them talking about, he goes there all the time. They serve him drinks, and even the bartenders, everybody's scared of him, They just give him whatever he wants. He could go in and buy booze in any store he wanted to, because everybody was afraid of him. And he would, okay, keep talking. And he would go in the bar, and he would drink, and I told my friend, I said, let's get him. He said, what? I said, let's get him. And at the time, I had stabs, and the stabs back then were pretty thick, pretty good thick stabs. And I said, okay, let's get him. So we're going out, we go inside, and we wait for him, and actually we're going to ambush him, and we did. He comes out of the thing, and I swing the staff at him so hard, hit him right on the forehead, knocked him clean out. I mean, knocked him out good. And he hit the floor, and my friend wanted to beat him some more. I says, no, just go. And I had this little pen knife. It was a part pen and part knife. It was a little tiny little thing, like a nail clipper more than anything else. And I remember pulling it out, and I looked at him, and I carved this symbol on his forehead, this upside down 4 with the cross in it. And I did that, and it was like just spontaneous. I just did that, and I got back, and I thought, why the heck did I do that? I said, I couldn't believe it. So why did I do that? Because this guy's going to go for me. This guy's going to kill me, And I just remember thinking, why did I do that? My friend goes, why do you do that? And I said, I don't know. He goes, man, it looks cool. Let's get out of here. He said, I don't know what. That was freaky. He goes, man, but it's worked. And, and what happened later on is that weekend, I think that was a Thursday or Friday, and anyway, he got in trouble with the cops. And when he was in jail, they said that he hung himself. He committed suicide that weekend. So it was lucky for me, but the strangest thing is a lot of people hung themselves. A lot of the young guys like that hung themselves that day, and I find that awfully strange. because one guy I knew really good, man. The guy would never hung himself. He would never hung himself, and he said he hung himself, and I don't know. I always wondered about that, Gardena police station. 'Cause there's like 3 guys that hung themselves in that frame of a summer, And later on, for years, and I always wondered about this symbol I did. And when I met Master Yu, I asked him, I told him this particular thing that happened. Is he recognized this symbol? He goes, oh, interesting, your past life. He said, certain symbols you make when you were a holy man, he says, when people would die, you make, like the Tibetans, you make a symbol on him to bring them back in the vicinity or ever somewhere else. He said, the symbol that you did, and he showed me, he draw the symbol, he goes, this is to hold them back. This is when a demon goes to hell and makes them stay there, they can't come back. It traps them. He said, you trapped them, that's what you did. That was a past life instinct. This guy was demonic and you knew it. I said, wow, that's interesting. I can tell you about Raul's godfather, who became one of my best friends. And I like, because actually Sergio looks like him in a lot of ways, except for he's kind of like a mean version of Sergio. Same size, almost same build and everything. And actually, I met him because he was in charge. He was in middle school, and he was a leader of a gang. But he was a tough guy. I mean, really tough guy. And between 9th and 10th grade, he goes, you study martial arts, and he kept challenging me. He kept wanting to fight. And I said, I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight you. And I wasn't scared of him. I just didn't want to. It was like no reason to at that particular time. And I was studying with Carl, and he said that. And actually, in 10th grade, we got in the same class together. We got in trouble for playing a prank on the teacher, and I kind of thought about it. He did it, and we became like friends a little bit. Then he wanted to fight me. He said, come on, let's spar. So, okay, so we sparred, and he couldn't beat me. And yet this guy could beat a lot of guys in fights. And he goes, I can't believe you skinny, he goes, like, you skinny little bitch. I believe I can't beat you. He couldn't. He was a good fighter, and he couldn't beat me. And I can't say I beat him either. We used to come to a draw a lot of times, and we'd fight for hours. I mean, literally hours. So he became like my best friend. And I remember taking him to Ark Wong for the first time to tell him about Kung Fu, and he studied a little Taekwondo or Tang Soo Do or something like that. And I told him about Kung Fu and stuff like that, and I wouldn't show him that much. It wasn't like, back then you didn't share a lot of stuff. I said, if you want to learn, I could take you to my teacher's school, Ark Wong. And at the time I was driving. I think you could drive when you're like 15 and a half in LA, and back then. And I drove him down to Ark Wong School, and to meet him. And he thought, this is an old man, he can't do nothing. And Ark Wong goes, oh, I could knock you out with one finger, boy. And he goes, I don't believe it. And Ark Wong hit him in the forehead like, two. And I remember his legs buckling, and he fell on his knees. And he became instant devotee, instant Kung Fu practitioner after that. He said that's never ever happened to him. He said he got in fights and get hit. But me and this guy, we come a lot together. He saved my life in a couple instances. Even though I studied martial arts, I was jumped one time with by some guys. Some punk guys, man, and they had knives, and I was just riding my bicycle on the way to the store, and he lived in the same neighborhood, a couple blocks up, and he saw me down there, and he saw me, all these guys with me. He said, I knew they weren't your friends. He said, I knew who those guys were. So he came, and he was swinging this bicycle chain with a lock on it, and he beat the hell out of those guys. I didn't have to do nothing. He just came and boom, 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 just beat these guys. And one guy who I thought was the toughest guy was totally afraid of him, and yet there was a big difference. I mean, he wasn't that tall, and the other guy was almost demonic looking, had this crazy face on him all the time. I remember he got down, he hit the guy so hard on the side of the head, and the guy like fell on the floor and said, I'm gonna hit you again, you better start eating the grass. And I remember the guy eating the grass on the lawn, the person on the lawn, he fell down, and I was like, oh, that was a trip. So he was pretty tough, and I said, I owe him. He saved my life a couple of times that way.
So where's he now?
He's studying it. I think he doesn't do nothing. He has, between me and you, he's got karma issues. Because,
or should I say, how would you like him what part in the movie would you like him to?
Well, he's supposed to come back and visit me, but he can't work out now because he's got bone spurs on his feet all over. I think it's karma because he was just, I was like the good angel. I would always tell him things because, you know, he tried to talk about hurting people, doing something crazy, and I would say, don't do that, because like that's not right. I was always like his conscience, you might say. And I mean, he did a couple of things that were not nice. I remember like this kind of a, remember like Devin, like kind of a homely little white kid and stuff like that, kind of a nerdy kid. He would go up to the guy and just spit down the guy's back. I think it was funny, you know. I mean, he probably scarred these guys for life, and you know, things like that scars people for life, and people don't even realize it back then. And you know, it's like a memory he don't even forget about. And that guy probably thinks about it every day. But you know, he would do stuff like that. But the guy was totally unafraid, man. I mean, totally unafraid. We'd go fight, and it'd be like we'd be outnumbered like 4 or 5 to 1, and he's there right in the middle. He wasn't afraid, and he'd get the rest of us going. There was a couple of us that hang out together. We fought together all the time.
So what was your schedule like? I mean, you're in this gang, you're training, you're school.
Yeah, all the above.
24/7.
Yeah, everything was 24/7. You know, I'm still now, I've still got a busy life. You know, it's like, you know, people call me in the middle of the night. I'm like, I'm there. I'm not hiding away. My life's always been that way. In fact, it made me very successful in printing. When I was in printing, the boss said, "How you could multitask easy. You could do like 5 or 6 jobs at one time." In fact, every job I've quit, they've always had to get at least 4 people to replace me. Like my last job, Royal Printing, he said, "I had to get 4 full-time people to replace you." He said, you know, because you're able to do multi jobs at one time. So I did the same thing. I was raising a family, going to school. I had 2 jobs and trained.
How many hours a day did you train? Or
I trained every chance I got. Every chance I got. Like, you know, Raul brings his baby here. I was the same. I brought Raul when he was a baby to the school. I carried him. If I had to go back to work, I took Raul with me. You know, at school, you know, I never had what I call idle time, just sitting and watching TV, never. Because people talk, you remember this on TV? I didn't watch a lot of TV back then. You know, the only thing I ever watched was Sundays with football, because I was doing my homework. I would watch football, I'd be doing homework. You know, I'd be working out. One of my part-time jobs, I had a full-time job, usually with printing, and my part-time job would be a security guard. And I always had a job that I could do my homework. You know, and I found out, and that's when I found out by meditating 20 minutes, they would say 20 minutes of good meditation is like 4 hours of sleep, and I lived on that, even when I was in hospice here. Because hospice, I was getting calls 24. I was teaching, working hospice from 8 to 5, teaching here at the old school from 6 to 10, and then going back doing hospice work on call. I did that for, you know, like 7 years straight. And just able to do that. And I would tell myself, shut down for 20 minutes. That's 4 hours sleep.
when did you give time to your gang?
Well, the gang thing was, the only time the gang thing was when we hung out together. Part of it when I was still in high school when I got involved with them. I was involved in, I hung out with them at lunchtime, you know, during all the breaks. I mean, our school was crazy too. I remember they talk about the shooting that's famous in Gardena, and I said, I was right there when it happened. That Forrest Gump thing again. I remember this guy, remember the Samoan guys? At the time the Samoan were starting to come into Gardena. And that's when a lot of the Filipinos and all the Asian people, besides Japanese, because when I first went to Gardena, it was mostly Japanese. And from Hawaii, so all the people coming in. I remember being at school and hanging out with Ricardo and some of the guys. And we go to like a strange section where nobody, kind of a quiet section. And we saw this one Samoan guy, was a really nice guy. And hanging out with his girlfriend. Oh, to let you know, that was on Monday. On Friday night, I went to a football game. And man, I saw one of the worst fights I ever saw. It was between blacks and Samoans. And the Samoans totally demolished those black guys. I mean, totally, because they were ruthless. They didn't just beat them up. I mean, it was like they just stomped the ground into them. Somehow they had sticks and they just beat them with sticks. I mean, just totally almost left them for dead. And we're just watching this like, wow. It was about, that was a big, pretty good group. It was like maybe about 20 against 20.
How many were you there?
Oh, the G13, there's a couple hundred people in it.
But
the one I hung around with, when we had parties, we'd be like in mass, which is like every Friday and Saturday usually. Be at somebody's house or somewhere, so you would just hear about it. There was like 4 of us who were studying with Kung Fu, and then there was 2 guys in my personal gang, that Donnie Arona, who was just one of the homies, and I forgot this one other guy's name. And he was like the first Buddhist Mexican I ever met in my life. He was Mexican, but he was Buddhist, and he was devout. I mean, he was Buddhist. He wasn't, and it was so strange because I couldn't believe it, You're Mexican, how can you be Buddhist, But he was. And that was our little gang that we had. Once in a while, a girlfriend would be with us or somebody, But that was our little gang, and we kind of like hold out to each other. And even in the gang, we'd have our own fights. It would break out, and we'd watch each other's back, and we'd fight the other guys in the gang, and we'd fight and become friends, that kind of stuff. Unless it got really bad, and sometimes it'd get really bad, but usually end up becoming friends. I mean, once in a while, they'd go outside and one guy would shoot somebody else or stab somebody else. But it was weird. It was like being in hell almost. It's like being in prison. It's that same thing. You're friends, but you're not friends. These guys are on your side, but they'll kill you if they had the chance. I mean, I had one of the guys, my gang, they hung out with us for a while, wanted to shoot me. I mean, out of nowhere, his name was Indio. And I remember he would hang out. He had his girlfriend there, who, poor thing, she was so ugly. Her name was Debbie. She was really ugly. And she was a Caucasian girl that hung around with us, And I remember one time, I thought, boy, this poor girl was ugly. And I remember him telling me, hey, Steve, you want to know something? He goes, I went to Debbie's house the other day to wake her up, and she didn't have her makeup on. And, she's really ugly without her makeup. I thought, dang, that girl's ugly. Anyway, she was in one of my classes, and she just kind of had a weird personality, and nobody would talk to her. So I felt sorry for her, so I wanted to talk to her. Well, he comes by, and he sees me talking to her. He thinks I'm picking up on her. Okay? So I had this routine all the time. When I would take the bus, and I'd get off on the bus, I'd go to the boulevard, then I'd walk home when I was training at my school. And he knew that. A couple of times he even went with me to the Kung Fu school, just kind of hung out and just watched a little bit, never joined. He just kind of came with us, and a couple of the guys did. And they go walk around Chinatown while I kind of trained, and then they come back. So he knew my routine, basically. So I go and I say, hey, Indio, what's up? And he pulls out this gun, and he points it right at me. I thought, what's up, man? He goes, you're flirting with my girlfriend. And I could see the gun. I could see the bullet in the gun. I thought, what? I said, you're going to shoot me? I'm your friend. And I said, dude, I was talking to her. I'm just talking to her. And I talked him out of it fine. I said, man, we're homies. I said, I can't believe you're going to shoot me. You're going to believe that? Did she tell you that? No. I said, why are you doing that for? And I talked him out of it. He put his gun down. He said, I'm sorry, and stuff like that. I tell you, but that's the way it was, But I told myself not to trust this guy, especially because he was drinking that day. And we're Indian, because he was drinking. And I kind of forgave him because I know how Indian people, when they drink, they get stupid. Anyway, he did some kind of robbery that next day or something like that, and they were going to catch him. So he went back to the reservation in Arizona. And anyway, long story comes short, they found him dead out in the desert. He had been drinking. He dehydrated. He was out there. They found him dead later on. But that's one of the weird stories. All this stuff, and like Ricardo, my best friend, like his story I was telling him about. All these guys train with me on, even the guys that train with me, it's too sad. A lot of their lives could have changed. They did, like Jerry Lee. Jerry Lee was like one of the coolest guys. I hated him at first because he was part of the gang that I wasn't really involved with. And he was in the Brown Berets. We were all in the Brown Berets, and I swore somebody stole my hat, and I swore it was him. But to this day, he swore it wasn't when I met him, that he didn't steal my hat. So I hated him, and I wanted to fight him. Then he came to the Kung Fu school, became a student. We ended up becoming best friends. I loved this guy. He was a really nice guy, but he had that Mexican temper. He was Mexican Chinese, one of the first Mexican Chinese guys I ever met. And but he looked Mexican. He was a very handsome man, very handsome young guy. And anyway, he got in a fight in the pier, and he killed a guy and then threw him off in the ocean, and the guy died, and he's in jail serving time to this day. But man, I really like that guy. I pray for him all the time because I like Jerry. He was a really good guy. I mean, you see when he was involved in the gang, and then he came to the school, and he was doing so much better. And then the school closed down, and then he was on his own, and that's when he got back into the gang thing. He got away from the spiritual part. When I went to a school, I mean, I have pretty well-known people that study with me, like James Liu and Albert, but I can't say they're really influential on me, because James was good, but James was muscular. I never tried to he wasn't influenced on me because he was, I couldn't identify with him. I really couldn't at that time. 'Cause he moved different, he was stronger, he fought different than I did. And in fact, we sparred, and I remember, I don't think he beat me, and I don't think I beat him. It was like no big deal. And another one, Albert Leong, who's well known in the movies, and Albert was good, but I see Albert was full-blood Chinese, and he always had special treatment because he was kind of like the protege in a lot of schools. So I never looked at him as wanting to be better, because I always figured he always had an insight that I would never have because of who he was. I mean, he was really good with Taekwondo, but he would teach me stuff. I have to say, Albert was really good and really impressive. I would say of all the martial artists, the two guys that impressed me the most, he's one. And the reason, like, when I saw Albert training one time, he was training with this pole. It looked like a log, a small log, and I saw him training the Taekwondo form with it. And I thought, wow, he's really good with it. So I picked it up. I could hardly lift that thing. Man, he was so strong. And I mean, he was just, the way he could move and his abilities and his focus. I mean, Albert was one of the best martial artists I ever known. Formed, I would say overall, probably the best besides the teachers I had. The other one was Tommy Chang, who was Tommy Ho at the time. The reason it was called Tommy Ho, we found out later on, I met him recently. I said, you told me Tommy Chang. I said, I thought your name was Tommy Ho. He goes, yeah, most people, he said, I forgot, all you old guys remember me as Tommy Ho. Because what happened is that back when they had the Chinese Exclusion Act, that you can't, the only way you could come to the United States if you were a family member, you were bloodline with somebody. So what his family did to get him here, they changed their name to Ho, which wasn't their real family name. So this goes back to like his grandfather. And his grandfather came to the United States, and they used the name Tommy Ho, the Ho name, H-O, for a long time, and that wasn't their name. And then now that, you know, his family settled and they found out that's what happened, he got his whole family name back. But Tommy, he's Chinese too, but I like Chinese because at the time, a lot of the guys I met from Hong Kong and stuff, I really wasn't impressed with them because they weren't strong. It's like wushu guys, people I meet out of mainland China, I'm not impressed with them because they're not really strong. They can be muscular, but they don't know how to use their power, their body. And Tommy was able to, and he was Chinese, and I said the guy was really tough. And another guy named Benny, by the way, Benny, I think is Lam, his last name. And I'm funny because I just saw his picture today in a magazine, and Benny was a cop. Benny was he was a tough guy too, but to this day he's the most secretive guy I ever met. But I know he knew a lot because I saw him in a street fight, and he just totally annihilated this one guy. And he hit the guy so hard, the guy literally slid across the street. But you know, I only saw him maybe like a handful of times, you know, in my life. But Tommy I saw all the time, and Tommy was really good in martial arts. Today, if he came here, did a seminar with Al Garza on that Matrix, Tommy's still good. And in fact, when I talked to him, I said, you know, I have to tell him, I said, you influenced me. You were like my inspiration growing up. I wanted to move like him because, you know, Tommy was like, you know, he's Chinese, so he wasn't very big. He was a very normal size. But the guy would move, and he could hit hard. And I thought, see, that influenced me because I said I can move like him. And when I see guys in the school, I would look at, every time I went to a school, I said, okay, this is a guy I want to be better with. This is going to be my role model. I want to move like this guy. I want to be that fast or that. It's interesting, at Sifu Kenny's school, Sifu Kenny's the one that I put that on. I wanted to move like him and be like him. And in fact, people even say it after a while when they said, boy, you could tell you're one of Kenny's students the way you move. You know, he used to move like Fajan. Fajan probably moves the closest to like Sifu Kenny does. One story I remember, somebody was asking me the story, did you know about Bruce Lee? I said, I met Bruce Lee, and I thought it's kind of interesting is that I met him when nobody knew who he was. He was just known from the Green Hornet, and there was a park by Holly Park that my bus was stopping me off when I was taking a bus to school. And one time I saw him running, and I thought, oh, that guy looks like Bruce Lee. And I walked up and I said, are you Bruce Lee? And he got very excited that I recognized who he was. And I remember he had this old Shar-Pei-looking dog, this ugly dog, and he would run with it, and once in a while he'd come by and he'd show me little techniques here and there, and I got him to sign my my martial art cards. And in fact, I kind of wish I would have had it, but the strangest thing is when I graduated from high school, they had this time capsule that you drop your stuff off inside, and someday they're supposed to dig it up. And it's, my name is going to be there with Bruce Lee's signature on it, so that's kind of interesting to see that. there's one thing about the Bruce Lee story I like to bring to light is that, Bruce is very famous, so everybody takes everything that happened, or some people that know him, as gospel. When I talked to certain people, they were talking about his fight with Wong Jack Man. And met Wong Jack Man, and I found out that he's a nice guy. He had, on stories I heard, that he didn't really even know what he was going for. And when he went to the fight, and people are talking about they were there and they witnessed the fight, and they actually didn't, because there was 3 gentlemen that were there besides them 2, and the 2 gentlemen passed away right away after that, and the one person refused to talk about anything, and people don't even know who he is. Wong Jack Man, when he was approached about his arts, I said, I've never changed my art. He studies the same thing. He's never changed his martial arts. So that story I just want to bring, and I just think it's kind of interesting. The people who say they were there were not there. The movie Fearless is based on a gentleman called Huyan Jia, and Huyan Jia, what he did, he started the Jing Wu system. That was the first school of its type to combine a lot of the martial arts, which was good, because once he had his teachers, he hired the best teachers he could find, and he sent them throughout the entire world, anywhere where the Chinese communities were involved. So what happened is these particular systems were outside of China, intact, when the Cultural Revolution came and changed everything. What's really nice is traditional styles, they also taught not just the martial arts, like just kung fu or just how to spar. They actually engrossed the entire art of Shaolin, or entire art of kung fu, and this included medicine as well as forms and well as fighting. So I was very lucky to get involved with it. And he called it the Jing Wu system, and this system again went through our particular lineage went through Vietnam and then back to Hong Kong and to the United States. My training, I guess, it was kind of a little bit different, because even though I didn't study from one teacher to the next teacher, I actually studied with 2 or 3 teachers at the same time, and usually done with the respect from the teacher, let him know this was happening. In particular, when I was studying Shaolin with Sifu Carl, he felt I had too quick a temper or too bad a temper. I grew up in a minority neighborhood and had a fight a lot of times, and in those kind of neighborhoods, you can't show weakness. It's hard to walk away, because you can't walk away. You just have to run away if you get away from a situation. And he felt that at the time I had too quick a temper, so he sent me to my first Tai Chi teacher, Marshall Ho. Marshall Ho is probably one of the most well-known people in Tai Chi Chuan, and it's because he was one of the first ones to actually teach people at a large amount, not just in a small school. And he taught at Hollywoodland Park, which is just underneath the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles. And he was a great teacher. I kind of patterned my teaching methods after him, because most teachers are very, very, very strict. You do it my way or the highway type attitude. And he was very open-minded in his teaching. And at 64, he could actually use Tai Chi, which I thought was really great. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is very slow, it's for old people. And after class, he would take myself and some of my Kung Fu brothers and show us how to apply it. And at 64, he was still a bodyguard, and he was a bodyguard for Cesar Chavez, an equal right activist at that time. So we were able to incorporate that aspect into what I was doing. He goes, you'll like Marshall. I want you to connect with him anyway. Because I said, well, let me learn from Chow Li, because Chow Li was Nixon's interpreter, who was very influential in everything in the United States. Because he's the one that, Chow Li, by the way, talking about Forrest Gump, was Nixon's interpreter for the first time Nixon went to China. When they took him to the Great Wall and they asked him, what do you want to see? And Chow Li said, I want to see the Shaolin Temple. Let's go to Shaolin Temple. Well, the government didn't even know about it. They were just rumors. They didn't even know if it really existed. And in a couple of days they found out, and they took them there. And I got to tell you what, and I like this to be on record. When he went there, he saw those 3 monks that were there. They're famous for being the 3 monks. The one that the government and the Shaolin Temple says the lineage is intact. Well, when Shaolin came back, he said he was very disappointed. I said, why? He said, because they're not fighting monks. They're monastics. He's like, I asked them, did they know martial arts? No, we're monastic monks. And you could tell by their names. They weren't fighting monks, they were monastic monks. That lineage is completely gone. So the guys stayed there were just monastic. The government's trying to say, oh, it's left intact. It's bull, because they weren't fighting monks. They put them in poses, a big deal. You could put anybody in a pose and say the lineage carried on. And all these guys are getting, it's so funny, they're getting famous like throughout life, and they're building these pagodas in their honor. And they weren't even fighting monks. That's so funny. But anyway, he's the one that went there and asked the government to do it, and they brought them there. Then they resurrected the temple. Then Jet Li came in after that, and they did the movie and stuff. So anyway, going back to that, I wanted to learn from Chow Li, but he was with Nixon at this time. And he wasn't at the Dao Sanctuary. Because I knew Charlie, I saw him there quite a bit. I just liked the way he did his Tai Chi. He goes, no, you want to learn from Marshall. So I went to go meet Marshall, and he was at the park in Hollywood Land, the sign in Hollywood. Right on the edge of the park, they're called Hollywood Land Park. And Marshall was teaching Tai Chi there, and he was like, I said, wow, this guy's old. And he was 62 at the time, but he was very healthy and very charismatic. And talking to Marshall, he told me he had a stroke when he was 50 years old. He was 50, he had a stroke. And he was 62 when I met him. And I tell you what, I could never tell he had a stroke. And he was also bodyguard for Cesar Chavez, the equal rights activist. And I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. So we were learning Tai Chi in the park, but we would practice our Kung Fu on the side. And in fact, some of his seniors, oh, don't practice, don't waste your time on that because you can't fight with hard power. You have to be soft. And I think that's bull. Anyway, Marshall would watch us a lot. And Marshall was a fighter, was a boxer and everything when he was young. And he would watch us, and afterwards he'd say, you guys want to know the fighting aspect. So he would teach us the fighting aspects because he learned from Tung also. Tung is like the fighting family of Yang Tai Chi style. And he would throw us applications and stuff that was unbelievable. In Bagua, he started teaching us Bagua out there. And my school brother Lloyd, Tamanahu, I started learning, who was learning with Doug Wong back in the garage in the days. And I could always beat Lloyd, sparring-wise. I always had a little edge on him. Even though Lloyd was a great fighter, I mean, he was a phenomenal fighter. I could always beat him for some reason. I just had his number. But when he started doing the Tai Chi and he got good, I couldn't beat him anymore. It was really weird. He was like not there. Then he learned Bagua. When he started getting real good at Bagua, he was not there. When I go to fight him, he was like, I almost like look around like in the movies, where's he at? He's like over here. He had this silent ability to like sidestep. And Lloyd was really good. To this day, he's still good. He came to the school, and he's 53, just like me, and he can still do monkey style, jump around like a monkey and stuff. And he's not light, because before we were all skinny when we were young, and he's a lot heavier now, but he can still move. It's like, he could really move. I actually lost a lot of weight, but he can still do monkey very, very well. He's probably the best monkey student I've ever seen. He learned with David Lee Roth. In fact, David Lee Roth was one of his school brothers. When he does all the movies, jumping, that's who he was training with.
Van Halen, you did?
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause I went over there and saw him. We would train with him too, and he was real quiet. He was real quiet. Trained with a lot of famous people. I mean, like David Carradine come to the school. A lot of these other actors that were famous at one time, but you don't hear about them no more. I talk about the Jacksons who would come to Cam school back when Michael was still black. He would do it. In fact, beat it. You would see our Lohan form. I see Michael practice in the mirror. He would change the moves, and you could see some of the Lohan form moves inside that. He would change the dance moves. Back then it was more secretive, you know, and back then it was more protective. You know, the Chinese. I'd say the Chinese that knew Kung Fu back then, they knew their shit really well. They knew their stuff. Now the prejudice you see now is that you see people coming out of China think that you have to be from China to know real Kung Fu, and it's crap. I'll be honest with you, I'm totally not impressed with people I see coming out. You see some of the old school stuff. I mean, even the Jing Wu, which carries on the traditional forms. I went on their website, the one in Shanghai, and they're teaching contemporary wushu. But then I understand that's because the government's supporting them financially. That's why they're teaching their forms. The people I see coming out of China couldn't compete with my Chinese brothers from the past. James, Tommy, all these guys, Benny, they would beat the crap out of all these guys who think they're great coming out of China. They would just, because the guys coming out now, they move well, but they don't know how to really administer power. And you see that because some of the guys who went and fought some of the Japanese karate people, they got annihilated by the Japanese. And that's an insult. And that to me just says, hey, look, but you know, it's like the government tries, oh, they weren't our best fighters. You know, that's crap. The guys I learned from, and the Hong Kong Chinese, like, and the Taiwan Chinese, are so much more powerful, so much more adept than the mainland Chinese. I mean, there might be some people still hiding, but I even saw today. I was on YouTube all day just downloading martial art movies and martial art stuff. I saw people do art forms like Limbo and Bongbo out of mainland China. They flowered it up so much. They just got that wushu flavor, like dynamic. You know, rather than the application, they're making the move like artistic, you might say, or showbiz rather than real application. when I looked at it, I couldn't believe it. I had to download it because I wanted to show you guys. See, look, I can't believe what they're doing to our forms, you know. It was at the northern school, you know, with Sifu Kenny. There's one school brother there. I don't want to say his name, but he's in a couple of movies. He's a kind of well-known actor. And this day, we ran into him at K-Star, and people could say, well, I can still tell these, well, this guy's really jealous of you. He don't like you. I said, yeah, we still don't like each other. He would give me a really hard time. And some of the other Chinese brothers, they would tell me because he said he don't like you because you're not Chinese. And he'd give me a really hard time. And they would talk about me, and I know enough Chinese to know what they're talking about. You could tell when they're talking about you, because, you know, Chinese people like to do that. They'll talk about you right in front of you. You know, they don't realize sometimes you know some of the words they're saying, but you know, they do that. And they would talk about me, and I just kind of shut it off because I was trying to be respectful. I didn't want to, because in our neighborhood, when you create a confrontation, you create a confrontation. It's not a slide by. It's not like, I don't like you. It's like go up to the guy and kick him in the face type thing. You know, that's what he did back where I came from. So I didn't want to go there. So I would try to ignore the guy. Till one day they told us, I remember I was gone for school for like a couple of weeks. I had the flu real bad. And I come to school, I said, I got to train. And one guy, he was talking about me really bad. I would say his name's Peter. Right? He was talking about me really bad. And I just like he had a bug in his ass for me. He always did. We go to a demo, and I try to be nice to the guy, and I said, hey, how you do? Why you talk that way? He just like jump on me for like any little crazy stuff, and I just, even to a point that some of the other school brothers, the seniors would say, hey man, take it easy, he just asked you this. And I just.
This is just to you, or?
Yeah, just to me.
Or were there other not?
There wasn't that many. There was, and even now in Sifu Kenny's school, there's maybe, his school is like 95% Chinese, and the rest, they really make you feel like an outsider, even if you're not Chinese, because Aaron went there and Easy, and they made him feel really uncomfortable. Aaron didn't want to go back because he ended up fighting one of the guys. They have respect for me because I'm a senior. They knew at the time I would fight. You know, they found that out later. This is the start of it, in fact. So I come up to flu, and Kenny got these headgear and body gear. He said, okay. He said, we're going to test this out. We're going to fight. So I said, okay. Everybody's fighting, and he's okay. You're going to fight this person. You're going to fight this person. And I told him, I don't feel good. I said, I just got over the flu. And I did. I felt really weak. And I said, let me try the headgear, because it was like really cool. I never got to try really have headgear on before, so I tried it. It was really nice stuff. And I said, okay, you're going to fight Peter. And I thought, okay, I'm going to fight Peter. It was like my opportunity. And he put the chest gear, and the headgear was already on. It was like real not easy to put on back then. And I said, I'm not even going to wear the chest protector. So they had a sparring, and they said, go. And I said, Peter, man, he went right for me. The guy hated me. I mean, he really hated me. So I went right at him too, man. I mean, we were just duking out. He cut my eye, but man, I busted his face up, and then I kept kicking him in the leg and the groin. In fact, when he hit the floor, I was stomping him on the floor, like a gangator do. I remember stomping. And mostly I was going for his stomach. I wasn't going for his head. Because I remember stepping on his stomach a couple of times. He'd get up, he was all mad. And we fought, and then Kenny says, you guys are just out of hand, stop, shake hands. We don't want to shake hands, so I just did it. And I saw Peter go, he was all mad, cussed me in Chinese and stuff. He goes around the corner, but there's mirrors all over the school, you know, even in the dressing room where he went. And I saw him going over, like, start throwing up. And I thought, yeah, I got him. I remember that good. And after that, because Kenny started doing more sparring after that, and I just went for total domination as much as I could. Even if guys could beat me, most of the guys couldn't beat me. And the reason they couldn't beat me, because at that time I was just a little bit stronger than they were. And I think what it is, I fought dirtier than they do. Because at the time I was also running mantis, and I don't think they weren't used to the infighting. They weren't used to, because I would hit them with the elbow, even though we had gloves on, and they didn't tell me not to use elbows. Don't use your knees. So I used my elbows and knees until he said don't. He never told me not to. If I was in, I would use my knees, use my elbows, and they weren't used to that.
So.
And even Carl taught me how to fight dirty too. You know, Master Chief taught how to fight dirty too. It's like when they would kick them in the leg, or if they kick you, just hammer their instep or their foot. Don't block their leg, hammer their foot.
So, at a school, it's okay to spar any style you want?
Well,
you don't have to stick to the school style?
No, it depends upon the school.
Yeah.
Most of the time, Kung Fu, they let you fight anyway. That worked. In the garage, when we fought in the garage, we could do anything. We could bite if we wanted to.
When you say garage, whose garage?
That was actually my Raul's mother, my in-laws at the time. That's before.
When you were teaching, or?
No, when I was a kid. I was just a kid. I was hanging around with Raul's mom. We were kind of like high school sweethearts. And she had a big backyard. And I come from a dysfunctional family, so there's no way I was going to be. Carl was, Carl's part black, and my stepfather hated black people, so it was like, there's no way I could even let him know I was training with him. He'd go crazy, he was just not a nice man either. So I spent most of my life with Lucy's family, with my in-laws, and he had a huge backyard, so in a big garage. So he said we could use it for training. So we used to train over there. Because first we were in the park,
And how many were you training
and 3 to 5. I said when we had people that come one time all the time. The price was only like, I think it would cost $7 a month. I don't know how Carl came up with $7, but it was $7 a month. That's really cheap. But it's like, I could kill you for that much money. And Carl, he would train us really hard, man. We did some intense training. I mean, it's like, in the end of the salute form where you bring your feet together, there was part of the backyard that was dirt. And we had to make piles of that dirt for like, when he decided time to stop. And then we make the pile with our feet, then we have to kick it like, out. Then we have to make the pile of dirt again, kick it out.
So it wasn't on grass?
No, not in the back part.
Oh.
And then, in fact, when we used to do line work, the kicks and punches back and forth, for the longest time, he had just dirt instead of lawn. On this for years. In fact, he said for years it stayed that way. Actually, I didn't learn native until I came here. Even though it was in my blood, I got raised with it. My grandfather would teach me certain things. My grandmother, my aunt, I had Aunt Maria would teach me a lot about the old traditions. My grandfather would raise the herbs in his backyard. He would grow that and make medicines out of that, and including pot. He used to grow pot in between the plants, and he would put that in alcohol. But he used to put something in it. He said, I was still so young, and I didn't pay enough attention, that the thing would turn was lime green. And that was the best medicine like Jiao in the world. You put that on, and it worked good. Yeah. And something else, I don't know what he put in it, I didn't pay attention enough. There's certain things I know, like I could smell a herb or smell a plant and tell you what it's for, because that's what he taught me, smell this. And he showed me the plant, I could look at it, like there's one for earaches, that when the kids get earaches, if you crush that plant, put on cotton, put in ear, and it gets rid of earaches. And I remember my stepson, Oren, having that, because he had a lot of ear problems. And this before, it was Omri, before me and Siki got married, my second wife. And I remember Haas was walking out and looking at this plant, I thought, this is it. Because he was having earaches, and I took something and I crushed it, I gave it to her, and I said, here, put this, and she goes, wow, that really worked. He never had earaches after that. And that particular one, there's another one, I know what it smells like, you can put on your pillow, make you sleep better. Of course, some mints. But a lot of them, I could look at them or smell them and tell you how to use the plant. I don't know the names of them. That's the thing about it. Say, oh, what about this hawthorn plant? What's this? I have to look at it.
Now what about
like dandelion? I used to use dandelion all the time. That's one of the medicines I had to use from the native tradition. My grandfather would give me for my blood. It's a blood purifier. These people that use this all the time as weeds, you could actually use. It's actually a good for blood purifier.
Now what about when you start? I guess when you first started seeing spirits.
I always saw spirits. In fact, my grandfather did this when he started raising me. He said that was my particular job when I have this, because I have these marks in my hand. So he started teaching me certain things. My grandmother, I was raised with, but it wasn't really until I met Sherlu and Carl that they really got me involved in that a lot more. Sherlu, he looked at my hand, because he's a Taoist master, and he said, oh, your job is to do this. Master Shi saw my hand, said the same thing. Then when I met Cam Nightchase, who was my native teacher in the Lakota tradition, or the native tradition, he said the same thing. He said, that's your job, is to help spirit people walk over. So he taught me a lot of prayer. So it's like certain markings I have, and they know that's what I'm supposed to guide you when. Master Yu, my Buddhist master, same thing. So a lot of this was part of my life. But I saw things like that even when I was little. A lot of this was influenced my whole life. Even I met a Catholic lady, and this was outside of that circle. I remember telling my family that my job was to help people with exorcisms. And she took me to exorcism when I was like 14 or 15. I remember being terrified. I was like, this is scary stuff. You know, I wasn't ready for it. She just took me in it. But the lady was powerful, I remember, because I used to carry a protective, a scapula. And Catholics, they have what they call a scapula that you would wear, that they have blessed. And this one was touched on a bone of a saint or something, and I would keep it in my wallet. And she would say, you have a protective, some protecting amulet that's in your wallet. And it's like, yeah, it's this right here. So she knew her stuff too. Her name was Judy. And I remember she came and she would teach me a lot about spirituality and about spirits and stuff, kind of in a general term. And then she came out of nowhere, and then she disappeared into nowhere. It's funny because all of a sudden, just never saw her again. You know, don't know what happened to her. I mean, it's like she was not even a real person. And crossing over, you know, people ask, you know, because I do certain ceremonies. There's a ceremony called the Sundance. And the Sundance is a Native American ceremony where you dance for 4 days from sunup to sundown with no food, no water. And I besides testing your faith, which is the main purpose, is to test your faith, you know, do you really want to do this? I also test my Kung Fu. I try to see, you know, does this work? Because even the elders would tell me that, you know, end of the day, like the end of the day, you're dancing from sunup to sundown. You said, you're like the rest of the guys. You can barely stand. You look like you're ready to fall. When you leave the arbor, you go behind the teepee and you start doing this motions. They start motioning like my hands in the air and doing this, and all of a sudden you're good. And you wake up in the morning, you start doing it again, and you're fine. So that's one way I test another one. And in that particular tradition, they have what they call a piercing ceremony, where they pierce you and they hang you up by your chest. And a lot of the guys were saying, you know what, you look very strong. But I do this thing called iron shirt, which you train with wires to make your body very strong. And so they would pierce you a lot of times, and it wasn't so bad. And they would attach these little sticks here, and they would hang you up by these ropes. And people say, wow, you look really strong, you don't show any emotions and stuff. And so one year I said, is it my Kung Fu or is it me? I want to know, was I that tough? So I had so instead of doing the iron palm training or the iron shirt training, instead of doing that, what I did is I decided not to do that. So I'm gonna go to the Sundance and just go this normal. So I went to the Sundance, and everybody goes, wow, you're really tough. You know, when they pierced you, you had no expression. I said, well, that's pretty good, because I was screaming my ass off inside. That thing hurt so bad, I was screaming, this whole time. And sometimes I say the piercing doesn't hurt, is when they have to cut you a little bit more this way and to insert these pegs into your the skin. I said, that's what it is, but I found out it's the training that makes a difference. One of my memories I have that I think is kind of interesting is things that go inside your head when you're training, you know, what pushes you. You know, everybody talks about people who have heart and what's kind of going on inside the head. People don't, what's going on inside that person? They just know that he keeps going. I remember one time training with one of my teachers, and Sifu Carl, in fact, and you know, he's such a hard, he was kind of a really intense teacher. I mean, we'd train, we started at noontime and we'd go till somebody got sick and threw up, and he said, okay, you guys had enough, which could be 9, we started at noontime, we'd go till 9 or 10 o'clock at night before. I mean, steam would even come off our bodies when it was not even cold. We would train so hard. And I remember people saying, wow, you train real hard, you don't give up. And I used to think in my head, oh, I'm gonna get so good today because I'm gonna kick his butt for training me so hard. I'm gonna pay back sometime. And so I would keep pushing myself. And I remember another time that was going on in my head when I was training with Marshall, the Tai Chi system, and it was so slow for me. I wanted to really be more aggressive and fight and spar and do my forms, and all of a sudden we're doing a system that's going so slow. And people say, you look so relaxed, and I said, oh man, I was screaming, this is too slow, I can't handle this, you know, but jumping out of my skin a lot of times. But you know, I kept going, but inside I would almost make myself laugh because I was saying, this system is just, I want to break out of this. But it taught me how to be very patient. I mean, that's another story is I kind of think is kind of interesting. A well-known fighter in MMA now, and he came and he's kind of one that helped me start. UFC did a segment on us, in fact, and I always tell people about this particular thing because when I moved here to Las Vegas, I just wanted to train and set up a gym in my garage. And he would go to school with my son, and he was just won the state champion, wrestling champion. And he'd watch me practice a couple of times. He would look at me to the garage, and I would just train on my own. And he said, what would you do if I did this? And I said, what do you mean? I thought he was going to come kick or punch, but he ended up tackling me and took me down to the ground. And my training didn't really do too much. I was used to street fighting. And what I did is I grabbed, what do you call it, an air blower, one of the leaf blower, and I started pounding him on the head with his leaf blower, and he's like, what are you doing? I said, this is Kung Fu. And got up, and I remember he had this strange look in his face, and the next day, my son says, he wants to talk to you. I said, why? I said, he wants you to start training us if you can. And I said, okay, I did that. So I started training him and my son and 2 twin brothers, and that was kind of the start, you might say, that we did. And it's funny that the UFC, most martial artists went to that, but UFC actually wanted the whole concept of street fighting. This is the way I started my school originally. Some of the stories that you hear is that people say, well, somebody taught me this way or somebody taught me this way in another school. And teachers evolve. They do change. In my life growing up, I was more involved at first about just health exercises. Then I wanted to be very involved in how to defend myself. And growing up, I mean, that was very important in my neighborhood. That's what the martial arts were about. They weren't about how pretty you looked or things of that nature, or how you can kick, but can you defend yourself? And it's very true. You know, I had my situations a lot growing up. You know, being a minority neighborhood, it's like a lot of people thought it was an easy target. What they found out wasn't the case after we started sparring, which is kind of interesting because when you got in fights that day, you usually end up becoming friends. Not like today where there's a lot of guns, a lot of people shoot each other. I hear it's starting to return back to that, of people starting to fight a lot more and kind of challenge each other. And I think that's kind of a good thing, as long as there's it doesn't get too far, people get hurt too much. People talk about martial art teachers, you know, kind of what you do afterwards and certain things. You know, it's kind of interesting is that some of my best memories I ever have is when I hang around with other Kung Fu teachers, or we have like little get-togethers at a certain time. You see this, it's like we enjoy life a lot, and I think most Kung Fu teachers are very humorous. We see life different. You know, it's like when I was working in hospice for a long time, we joke a lot, and people say, wow, you guys sure joke a lot. And sometimes you do that. You see a whole different aspect. You don't take life as serious, or as everything has to be in a extreme situation. We like to joke, like to have fun. When some of the people come over, some of the other teachers, the wife even says, wow, you're really, you guys are just laughing all night, we're hearing you. And sometimes there's stories about just the way people train or just the way people are. One particular time is like, we just like to joke a lot. One of the teachers, Tyson, came inside, and the wife, he was on crutches. He said, what's happened? Why are you on crutches? He says, oh, my wife, Rebecca, she gets really mad when I leave the toilet seat up. So, you know, a lot of times the teachers are very, very lighthearted, and we just enjoy things. We talk, again, about students, about certain things we do, you know, how something so basic would tell people, and it always goes to, well, you think your student is bad, why they'll tell me about their student, and it just kind of goes on about trying to teach people. Or I have one student in particular that I taught, and it's one of those guys who would take private lessons, which can be pretty expensive. And next time he come for his next private lessons, like he was a whole different person. It's like not the same person walked in. And I couldn't teach him anymore because he had moved in the far side of town, and he asked if he could take lessons. That teacher called me up and said, what did I do to you? I said, why? He said, why do you send him to me? Because he was having to reteach him every time the same way the class would start. And you see this, I guess, in all aspects in all the different schools. The Lohans are known for that, for being very individualistic, but even stronger when they get together as a group. Very powerful. And I remember seeing a picture at the Taoist sanctuary, and it was Kaidi. He was showing me this picture, and you see all the monks in standard monk position, you know, standing like this, meditating and stuff. And then you see guys in the background like this, you know, standing like this, and you can see them talking. A lot of our formal training came from Carl, Sifu Carl, because, you know, he's as a Taoist master, as a Taoist thing. He worked with Sherlu, and he'd take me to the sanctuary. In the sanctuary, we do Qigong, and the Guanjin school that we would do with Sherlu was really involved with spirituality. And he would show us the Shen exercises, see spirits and stuff like that. And at one time I remember getting a little bit scared doing that because I was seeing it too fast. And Sifu Carl was, you know, he would talk me through certain things. So he was one of my most influential teachers when it came to the spiritual realm. And other stuff I learned from other teachers, he kind of like brought it all together. And I could see the similarities. And we would sit and talk about spirituality. And then my school brothers, who were also involved with the sanctuary at different points. We'd all get together, and we'd go to Denny's and drink coffee all night till they throw us out, because it was like, for toast and coffee it was like $1, and it was free refills and free toast. We stayed there all night, and we do that. We talk all night about spiritual things, you know, and we got involved with John Davison, who was very involved with Carl Castaneda and that particular group. And John Davison would teach us a lot of things, and this guy named Bruce Babke and all these other people. And when I was at the Taoist Sanctuary, what's interesting about that, when I first went there to meet Sherlu, and Carl took me there when I first started training with him. He said, I want you to meet this. And the sanctuary, looked like a temple. And I remember the thing, we were driving down there, we went down this driveway, and it had sprinklers coming on, so it's like misty, and then all of a sudden we drive and we see this, looks like a real temple in the middle of Hollywood. And it was built by a guy called Kai Di, who played Wolfat on Hawaii Five-0, and he was one of the main teachers there, and he brought Sherlu in there, and he had built this temple in this area, which by now they actually tore it down. They built Sherman Oaks Mall is on that location. We would have the most interesting teachers come by to teach Qigong, and we're talking about old school people that were they escaped from China, that were from Hong Kong or from Taiwan. They would come and they would teach us certain Qigong exercises, teach us things, and then disappear. They would come, they'd be there for a while, and I think what it is they wanted to teach, they had a place to teach, but they couldn't make an income doing it. You know, none of those guys could, but they would just kind of do it for fun, and they would kind of hang out, and I don't know if they got bored, they moved away, and you wouldn't see them again. But we had a lot of people come in of all different traditions. I remember a voodoo guy coming in, and I wasn't there when he did that, but everybody said he put a stick on the ground and he made it turn into a snake. Like, I don't know. I'm a Missouri. Remember, I always say that. I have to see it to believe it. But I remember seeing the guy. He looked dark to me. I wasn't impressed with him, but he disappeared us out of nowhere also. But John Davison was comparing all kinds of religions, and at that time, Master Shi was here, and when Master Shi would come too, it was like John Davison, Doug Wong, Carl Totten, Sherlu, Master Shi, of course, those two head guys. John Price, his wife, Baugh, and a couple other people would come there. And I was like the kid. I was just like the teenager. And they would come and talk about spiritual stuff, like a meeting almost, but just kind of like exchange knowledge. You know, Sherlu would give them information, and Master Shi would give him. Master Shi, though, even though as he was spiritual, he was afraid of Sherlu, because he would tell me, he says, I like you. He said, don't study from this man. I said, why? He said, he does Mogwai style, too much ghostiness. But Sherlu was a loving, compassionate man. To this day, he still is, you know. His Qigong is probably the most powerful I've ever seen, too. He's the only man I've ever seen levitate. And I remember we were training one time, we were doing the 31 exercises, part of the clown head exercises that we do. And I remember he used to sit on this little upriser, not like this, little table, like a little bench. He would sit on that. That was his spot, and we would sit in a circle with a candle in the middle. And I remember meditating, and I was like, antsy, I can't do this anymore. I'm bored. I remember looking at him, and all of a sudden he was like this far off the ground. And I looked, I was like, whoa! Almost like jumped up. He looked at me and went, like, you understand? I could tell. I said, okay. I was like, whoa. And after class, he goes, I said, okay, Sifu. I said, don't talk. I told Carl, of course, you know. Carl told us. Well, back then, he didn't want to share a lot of information. Another thing I saw with Sherlu was with a bracelet, like a black jade one. And that's when we were at John's house in this particular meeting. And there was a couple of us, like I'd be there, a couple of young people. Mostly, I was only a young person there most of the time. Even Jim McNeil was there. I mean, he was there once in a while, not all the time. He was only there when Master Shi was there. Master Shi was there. He wasn't there. But John Price had two little boys at the time, and very loud. They weren't very disciplined at the time. They were like screaming and yelling and wanted a lot of attention. Poor James was really loud, and Charlie, who, by the way, lives here in Las Vegas, and he knows this story very well. And he would jump around, And he starts running around like a little kid. I think he was only like 2, not even 2 yet. And Sherlu grabs his arm right here and pulls him over. He looks at him. He pulls out of his collar this on this thing with red string, a black. Looked like it was a black bracelet, like kind of put in a wrist, but it was black. But it was round, not flat. And he says, he looked at it and he says, "Oh, look." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "What do you see?" He held it up. He goes, "Wow, a doggy." I don't think it was a lion. He saw it. He turned it over. He goes, "What do you see now?" And I remember Charlie's face going, and he pulled it away and he said, what he was thinking, you could see his mind, something. And Carl was sitting next to him. It's like, "Wow, do you see that?" I said, "Yeah, I did." I was sitting right next to him. Sure, I saw everything. And I couldn't see the bracelet. I was trying to look at the bracelet. And I remember to Charlie, and I saw Charlie, because Charlie comes and visits me once in a while. I'm like, I used to change his diapers, you know. He's like a grown man now. He's in his 30s. And I said, "Charlie, you remember that?" He goes, "You know, everybody asked me that story. I don't remember." He said, "I was too little." He said, "I don't remember it at all." He said, "I was just a baby, you know." But everybody's always asking him about that.
What about you were told things about things to come out of the school?
One of the most interesting things that I was told, because my whole life with my grandfather, I always met psychic people, you know, psychics. They would come visit my grandparents, you know, just like, I had an aunt, one of my aunts, my Aunt Adeline, who I put a picture just over here in the General Kwan. She was very spiritual. She was a spiritualist, you know, very involved in the spiritual arts. And we would have, in fact, she was a major influence. I didn't even think about that till now on me, because we would sit down and she would ask me what I saw and what I learned and about this and her opinion and
Your how old?
my whole life. My Aunt Adeline was there, and she would ask me the whole time, you know, about certain things. What did I learn and this, and she was like excited about it and stuff like that. And I forgot where I was going with this. Well, I had all these psychic people that would come up to me, like my whole life, and her friends she would meet psychic people, and she would go to all these fortune-telling people too, you know, all the time. And she would have seances at her house. I remember that she would have seances at her house, and 3 ladies, I remember 3 different times. 3 ladies and later on 1 man said that my life was unique, and they would look at me and said, "You're going to be a major influence on the teacher of the next Buddha, the next Christ." They always say the next Buddha, the next Christ. They said, "It's going to be one of your students is going to be the teacher." And I thought, wow. So even now, because even General Kwan, when he channeled through Ephraim, he said the same thing. So I treat every student. I can't tell. It's going to be one of you guys. I don't know who it is. So I treat every student like they're going to be that teacher to the next. And you think about it, that's when I talk about the Maitreya, the 2012, all this stuff coming up, you know. But again, I'll be gone by that time, because this person could be elderly when he teaches this person.
Why is our retaliation? We wasn't complaining in the first place.
Easy talk here.
You
Yeah,
didn't send
easy
it.
time here.
You didn't do it.
You didn't do it.
Hold on.
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway.
We need the motorcycle sound.
Looking for adventure. And whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, gonna make it happen. Nice to meet you.